Great. Thank you so much, Sydney. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors Workshop number 1, East Bay Regional Park District. And today is, what is today? Today is Friday,
March 5th.
March 5th. And we are starting our meeting here at 12:35 I have on my watch. So I just wanted to say that welcome to all the to everyone. I'm glad you could come here on your Fridays. And this is as you know, this is our opportunity as Board of Directors to say what our priorities are for the future. And staff has prepared extensive notes from our last meetings and progress reports. If you noticed, there's also progress notes on what those projects and priorities have gone through. But I look forward to a lively discussion. We're going to have a short presentation. I think we actually, are we going to be able to meet the new general manager? I think for briefly, and we'll get to introduce ourselves, and also instead of bombarding her with our priorities, I think it would be nice to let her get to know us and express what your hobbies and hobbies are in your real life outside of being a board of director. So with that, I'm going to turn this meeting over. Let's first I need a roll call from our clerk of the board. Yolanda, please.
Yes, thank you. Director Wieskamp.
Here.
Director Lane.
Here.
Director Wasfy.
Here.
Director Coffey.
Here.
Director Eccles.
Here.
Director Corbett.
Here.
And President Rosario.
Here.
And then from our executive team, we have Carol Victor, District Counsel Carol Victor, Deputy General Manager Ana Alvarez, AGMs Johnson, Kelchner, Auker, O'Connor, and Chiobaro. I believe I have everyone.
Great.
Very
good. Okay, with that, we'll go to our interim general manager, Carol Victor.
Good afternoon, Carol Victor, Interim General Manager and District Counsel, and welcome to workshop number 1. It was almost a year ago we had the last board kind of open discussion workshop with the board, and then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So the structure of this workshop really hasn't changed too dramatically over the years, and at least since I've been with the agency, but we think it's been pretty effective for the board to establish their priorities. The structure is that each board member identifies their individual priorities, and we record those. We try to see where there's board consensus on priorities, and then we come back at a workshop number 2 and report back to the board in terms of how we're going to move forward with what the board's identified. As the board's aware, last year we missed a workshop number 2, and one of the comments that I heard towards the end of the year is that the missing that workshop number 2 was noted, and it was an app, and perhaps we lost an opportunity in terms of moving forward with certain priorities. All that being said, we did accomplish a tremendous amount in 2020. We just did the year in review, and it was a remarkable year in many ways. Historically, Bob Doyle would take this opportunity to speak and tell you about the issues and challenges facing the district. I'm going to be very brief. I've just listed what I think some of the issues are facing the district in a bullet point form, and then I am going to turn it over to Ana Alvarez and Deborah Auker to lead the workshop. Right at the beginning, I would like to, as Sabrina Landreth is here, she's our new general manager. She will be starting in a week. And Sabrina will be, she may not be able to stay on for the entire workshop, but she is here to listen and to get to know the board and some of the issues facing the district. So here's my top 7 challenges and opportunities facing the district. Number 1, transition. The long-term general manager and the long-term leadership of the district has retired. We have a new general manager, the first woman general manager for the agency. And there's just going to be transition with that, that long-term institutional memory leaving the district. We're going to get change. And so I think that transition is one of the challenges and opportunities we have. Growth of the agency. Seemingly overnight, this agency went from a small agency that was built on relationships to a larger agency that's in need of processes and systems. Number 3, COVID-19 continues to impact absolutely everything we're doing and will be for the foreseeable future. Number 4, the popularity of the parks and the demands on the parks. As we know, the parks are more popular than ever, and we have to keep up with that demand, both in opening new parklands and staffing those parklands. Diversity, equity, inclusion. We are at this moment in time where we're asking ourselves whether we're meeting our equity goals in delivery of our services to the public and to our workforce. Climate change and fuels management, that's number 6. Fuels management is going to continue to consume more and more district resources, both in staffing needs and the needs for funding. And in addition, all of our shoreline infrastructure is at risk, and we do have to go through a prioritization in terms of managing those resources. And then lastly, if those challenges weren't enough, the economy. We're really at a moment in time where there's much uncertainty. We're in a recession. We know just the Park District itself has had a huge loss of revenue from our concessions and from our rental facilities. There's a crash of the commercial real estate market, and we don't know how that's going to impact our tax base. We're potentially in a real estate bubble due to the historically low interest rates. So just the Park District has always been fiscally conservative and managed our resources sustainably, but we really are in a time of much uncertainty. So those are my top 7 challenges and opportunities confronting the district. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ana Alvarez.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get us started. And I just need confirmation that you can see. Let's see.
Sure.
Okay. Oops. So so thank you again, General Manager Victor. It's a beautiful day today to contribute to the delivering of the mission of the East Bay Regional Park District. Good afternoon, Board President Rosario, board members, esteemed colleagues, and members of the public who may be joining us today. Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez. And I think the best way to kick off this year's board workshops is to briefly provide an overview of the what and the how, and most importantly, to provide context, which speaks to the why. So in terms of the what, as in past years, the board of directors will engage in 5 workshops or referred to in other public agencies as study sessions. In general, the board workshops are an essential resource for our elected officials, the public, and staff, as they provide us with the opportunity to focus on long-term decisions rather than the day-to-day management issues that confront the Park District. We begin with board workshop number 1, where primarily we would like to hear from individual board members' interests, followed by an opportunity to prioritize this interest through a deliberation of the entire board while allowing staff to present on your focus topics that may shape the prioritization of your interests, which will be done in board workshop number 2, which is in 3 weeks from today. It's a very quick turnaround. And in April, we will be back to host a workshop on the Park District's capital finance, and capital programs, which includes a status update from the Maintenance and Skilled Trades Department, MAST, on capital investments pertaining to our maintenance projects funded by the 553 fund, which is Insider Baseball. But the fund is really the major infrastructure renovation and replacement fund, which the board of directors has been very much the pioneers in the public sector market in setting aside money to address deferred maintenance and preventative maintenance. So that's a very good piece here. So we'll hear on that item in that workshop. Then we will be followed by a workshop in the month of May, where we focus on the park district's built and natural infrastructure. Also, you may see it as an update on capital projects from the Design and Construction Department, a presentation on natural resource management from the Stewardship Department, and an update on trails planning from our Planning Department. As you recall, through this class and comp and reorganization process in 2020, we moved the Trails Department we merged it with the Planning Department, and we will hear from all of them at that time. Then we also will be engaging in a comprehensive review of the park district's land acquisition for the preservation and conservation of open space, which serves as the capstone of our annual workshops as presented by the Lands Department, which will take place in the month of July. You should know that Deborah Ocker, AGM of Finance and Management Services and our CFO, has graciously agreed to partner with me in facilitating this year's board workshops, as she has done in the last 5 years since the retirement of her predecessor, Dave Collins. Yes, that's right. So thank you, Deborah, for doing that and stepping up on behalf of the team. And also we will be, her and I, as well as our general manager, will contribute in creating the space for the conversations between the board members and staff regarding specific programs and projects or perhaps policies. As a quick reminder, the board does not take formal action on these items during these workshops, but rather provides general direction to staff. So the question has been asked in previous board workshops, and I distinctly remember Director Coffey asking, so where does the formal action really take place? So in benefit for our new board members, I want to show a visual representation that attempts to capture the process on how individual board members' interests inform and shape future operational actions and policy direction, while keeping front and center our responsibility to deliver on our commitments to the public and the voters. As you can see from the slide, after hearing from you, staff will engage in a process with the board members to reach general consensus on what we call the top 21 priorities, which 21 is an odd number, but it really translates to the top 3 priorities from each board member. This will happen mostly in board workshop number 2, and it may include items that the park district has been working on from previous years, identified in previous board workshops. Also, within an envelope of what we call organizational capacity in terms of financing, and from understanding organizational capacity, really the envelope is pretty much rooted first and foremost on our ability to deliver in terms of financing. So from a bird's eye view over the last 10 years, the Park District has been successful in delivering our mission by completing about $264 million in public work projects, mostly due to its tenacity to leverage public fund investments through grants and other funding opportunities, which drive the timing when these projects are completed. And that's a really key piece, because as I've heard from some of the board members is, well, we've been discussing this issue like Jewel Lake for the last 7 years, Anna. And say, yes, but everything has to be, all the stars need to line up. And it really starts with our ability to finance the capital project or the ecological restoration of Jewel Lake. And then also when speaking to capacity, we have to think about other factors that influence the ability to deliver on board member interest, including staffing capacity, either staffing levels or what may be occupying the space of staff. So for instance, last year, as General Manager Victor discussed, we were primarily focused on delivering parks as an essential public health resource during the pandemic, while keeping the safety of our employees as the utmost priority. That required a very heavy lift on our part, and that occupied the majority of the space of staff rightfully. So fiscal resources and external factors like COVID, like a pandemic, significantly influence how we prioritize, implement, and deliver. Board workshop number 2 and 5 also explore in great detail all that I briefly mentioned based on those thematic or those themes. So the park districts, and we have an opportunity to tweak and have another conversation whether what we prioritize in board workshop number 2 needs to be rethought or needs to be seen through a different lens, such as, for instance, an equity lens, a climate change lens, or other types of lenses that we use as we start getting the details through the workshops number 3 to number 5. So in general, I would say that as we get closer and closer to implementation, it is really through the park district's budget and its annual performance plans where we find the 2 most notable pathways for implementation, other than perhaps policy direction through board resolutions as part of the regular board meetings of the board of directors. And also it'll be important to know that it is at the board's committee level where these implementation activities take place, including reporting out on the status and outcomes of these items and priorities, which is very much in alignment of our organizational value of transparency. And so I believe that as you look at the board workshop process, that the greatest value of these workshops is really to engage in those informal conversations, to clarify issues, and to ensure that we have an understanding of those issues. So here's another way of looking what I just said. I'm a very data-driven person. So here's a snapshot for the last 4 years. So how do these interests come about and progress to be actualized over time? So for the last 4 years, we have captured the top board interests, which were identified, and we capture them either we give them ratings, for instance, something that we can deliver in the short term, meaning 1 year, or in the medium, or is it a medium length of time? So it's about 3 years, or longer term, which is 5 years or more. The park district has been carrying projects for about 10 to 15 years that now we're able to deliver, like it happened in 2017 with the final restoration of the Dodson Family Marsh, which took many, many years to get there. Another great example is the George Miller Trail. It took multiple years to get to the delivery of that beautiful trail project. So this is another way to understand how these projects or interests come to fruition. And we know that if these programs or activities are going to take multiple years, then we can plan them out and we forecast them into the future. Each year during the board workshops, some priorities from previous year are reinstated, while some new items are identified, as I just spoke. So the long duration of these ongoing projects that cannot be completed in 1 year, they carry forward as priority, or they may be completed differently or revised. So this graphic is just a visual representation of how the interests play out over time, each year adding some new interests and completing others. So just to walk you through the graphic, we have data going back to 2017, we may add 2016, but in 2020, we did identify about 78 interests, and just understanding what we needed to deliver. We were able to pull out about 20 of those that took the majority of the space for last year. And that's what you see here in the blue. But some of those pieces also are carrying over in multiple years. So let's see. And now here's another way of understanding the data as we're tracking our performance, which is really, really important for governance and to maintain our public commitments. Like I said, 2020 took the majority of the space. And while we did have about, we only delivered about 66 performance objectives. The reality is that our performance plan almost got doubled, actually a little bit more than doubled because of COVID. But looking at the original performance plan that was planned last year before we had a pandemic, just looking at that, we were able to deliver on 60% of that, compared to 2019, when we were able to deliver on 85% of these objectives. So we know that COVID had a significant impact in our ability to keep true to our performance plan. And we went into great detail at a board executive committee meeting, understanding the impact of COVID in being able to deliver our commitments through our performance plan. Another interesting data that I found is that in 2020, we passed about 307 resolutions. And so what does that speak to in terms of pace of delivery of the body of work that is being done? In 2019, we passed about 223 resolutions. So the difference is not that much, but the types of resolutions we were dealing with in responding to the Black Lives Matter movement. We were responding to a lot of resolutions that, or state legislation that came forward in expediting legislation to be able to mitigate climate change. So we did a lot of work on that, but not resolutions that were mostly the typical types of resolutions that we would see in a normal year, which spoke mostly to the delivery of capital programs and other operational items. So here's looking at understanding the performance plan based on how the budget process, or I'm sorry, the board workshops process work. Since we didn't have a board workshop number 2, as our general manager, Carol Victor, referred to, we did take out of the 78 items that were discussed, we were able to bring some of them into our performance plan. Here's a listing of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to highlight the fact that, for instance, there were a couple of items pertaining to either workforce diversity or items pertaining to how we capture data, demographical data for the delivery of programs as part of our mission delivery, and other board interest items that came out that spoke to equity. And so we had a couple of those, but the reality is that during June, during the Black Lives Matter movement, not only we were able to address those pieces and they come to the forefront, but we were able to do additional activities to be able to respond to the board's resolution in denouncing racism. And so again, this is another way of understanding the data. And some of the items that came out in the 2020 board workshop may come up in the 2022 performance plan, and may come through also in the 2022-2023 budget process. So here's another visual representation on how the 78 items that you guys share with us, which is not insignificant. So if you want to know more about the data, if you're data-driven like me, I can tell you who said the most. You know, it's a lot. And so out of these 78 items, we were able to identify last year, we placed them into categorical areas, understanding what was delivered in 2020. And we're tracking what was completed within the year, what's in progress, or what may be deferred or delayed for many different reasons, or items that have been sent or are on their way to board committees for board actions, such as funding allocation. It may need to be that we need a financing plan, or it may be that we need additional policy direction, because everything that we do it's interconnected. Everything's integrated when you're managing natural and cultural resources and the operationalizing the mission of the park district. And again, this graphic, I can't emphasize it enough that just responding to the pandemic, that's what took the majority of the space for last year. And what we did is not calculated in this graphic. This is just the board interest, those 78 items. So in keeping with Board President Rosario's theme of climate change, which I really appreciate the video that you tried to share, and hopefully we'll see it today, I wanted to use climate change as an example of what I just said to see how does this actually work on a real actual item. So yesterday we had the board's executive committee and we had a beautiful presentation by our planning department and a stewardship department pertaining to the impacts of climate change. One vulnerability that the park district is facing, which is the rising of sea level rise, which impacts bay water and the rising of the bay water, which is one out of many vulnerabilities facing the park district from a changing climate. So here's an example of the external factors that significantly will influence our ability to deliver on critical projects which demand urgency and require time. I said yesterday, I shared with the board executive committee that in essence, we're running a race against time. We have based on the projections, based on science, we have a very finite number of years where we can do all the ecological restorations along 55 miles of shoreline to really be able to protect not only the Bay Trail, but perhaps other infrastructure that's behind, and utilizing horizontal levees or natural levees as flood protection. But the reality is that when we start looking at doing ecological restorations or other types of capital projects, is that we may have 10 years, but the reality is even when we streamline permits and other processes, it really takes about 5 to 7 years from the planning stages to be able to deliver on these restorations. And again, once we have the finance in place. So it's a difficult piece, but we're managing and we have to understand the urgency in being able to respond correctly and adapt correctly and be able to deliver the mission of the district in protecting our natural resources and having a place for people to recreate. And what we didn't discuss yesterday, while we understand bayland water rising or sea level rising based on the science that we have, we didn't discuss another factor, which is subsidence or subsidence. So looking at your corner, on your left corner, you will see a graphic that represents not only sea level rise or bay water rise, but you will see that this is 1 out of 3 areas of vulnerability associated with the changing climate impacting our shoreline parks, which translate to fiscal challenges, including financing costs that are being realized now. And they grow exponentially with time and required not only a regional, but also a state response for a significant investment of public funds. So here's a picture of the damage at MLK's shoreline from last year's storm surge. And the picture, and you can see again how our infrastructure is eroding. And this is not as a result of bay water rising, but just simply understanding the impacts on the storm surges that are coming in. And again, climate science is telling us that we're going to see extreme weather patterns, which impacts our infrastructure for recreation, and it impacts our natural world. So another picture here that tells the story in its totality is the picture on the top right corner. Here's the tree, what it looks like visually, the tree die-off, which is the new challenge that we're facing and we're trying to wrap our heads around, which will also require another huge investment of public dollars, not in the millions. While we say it's $30 to $40 million for Anthony Chabot, the reality that this is happening district-wide across 33 cities or 73 regional parks. So we may be that we're looking at an investment of public dollars in the billions with a B. And that's going to generate and demand and prioritize a response by our government affairs team, a response by our fire department, a response by our stewardship department, and the entire executive team to be able to do the good work to be able to manage this correctly and be able to do so in a way that we're fiscally sustainable and that we're also carrying on with other activities necessary for mission delivery. So these are just examples to provide a little bit of context, which is more important than ever, given the imminent recession that General Manager Victor spoke to, that does shadow our short-term and long-term planning efforts. And there's other several uncertainties that will require us not only to be pliable, but also to swiftly adapt to the change conditions outside our control. And that's the key, outside our control, and be strategic at every turn. So these uncertainties range from, as I mentioned, and I hate to be repetitive, but it's just really, really important. The economic recession, our ability to continue mission delivery in a new world, and the effects of a changing climate on our land, ecosystems, and infrastructure. And certainly the immediate need to establish funding strategies to manage increasing and unfunded costs pertaining to employee benefits and other costs that we'll discuss in great detail in a future workshop. So we have these ongoing fiscal pressures, such as fulfilling our commitments to the public and voter-approved measures, but our responsibility to ensure safe and healthy lands, it really lies on our ability to manage wildfire prevention and being able to manage all these change conditions. So again, this gives a little bit of context in terms of being able to maintain our infrastructure, both built and natural, which is critical to the delivery of the East Bay Regional Park District mission, and certainly very significant in being able to work towards our vision, which weighs very heavily on all of us. So with that very broad introduction, I don't know if you would like Director Rosario to go immediately into board workshop number 1, or if you would like us to pause for Q&A. Director Rosario, you're muted.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Director Coffey.
Anna, which workshop has it been historically, number 1 or number 2, where we go around the room and rank priorities by putting tabs on the individual priorities that board members?
Hard.
Yes, a little dot exercise. It's a great exercise, which we're going to try to do remotely. And it's workshop number 2. And so after we hear everybody's interest, then we'll be able to send you the walnut so you can prioritize your top 3.
Ah, okay. That's how it works. Thank you. That's going to be a challenge this time to do in person, huh?
Yes.
Any other comment? Director Waspy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very concerned about the tree die-off, and the $30 to $40 million in my backyard scares the heck out of me. I was wondering, is there a written report on that? My neighbors.
Yes. So Director Waspy, this can be something we are putting together through our fire chief, Eileen Tiley, taking the lead in public safety. She's collaborating and working with our stewardship department and other folks to put together a report. And this is something that we can certainly speak to the board in board workshop number 2 in great detail. I know that we have already generated, for lack of a better word, a white paper report so that we can start in our discussions with CAL FIRE and other officials around the state. But this is something that I think our fire chief, I would like to give the opportunity for her to give you the details.
Great. Thank you.
Any other? Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. So appreciate the direction we're going in, since the environment has so many challenges for us going forward. It's both our what we're so proud of, our beautiful environment that we're in charge of, but also obviously we have so many challenges with climate change. My specific question is, have we started to put together sort of a data bank on costs associated with shoreline rise, challenged infrastructure, erosion? So in other words, costs associated with those challenges of climate change.
So I will give an opportunity for our CFO. And so maybe to get her started, we have began that work. It's in its very preliminary stages. We understand the fiscal pressures based on what we know today, but every year it changes. So Deborah, would you like to add anything else?
Thank you, Anna. Deborah Ocker, AGM Finance. As we talked about last year with our natural infrastructure, we're starting to gather that data, but we don't have a complete list of the costs at this time. That's something that we're starting to work on as we gather all this data through planning and stewardship.
Thank you very much. I know it's going to be a long list. Appreciate your work.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Director Wieskamp.
As long as we're talking about months, money, and costs, I don't know about the rest of you, but in my ward, some of the parks have been so overrun with people. And Coyote Hills, they literally have to shut the gates for a half hour so some people can leave before more can come in. And there's concern with a lot of street parking. Brushy Peak, I don't know, I think most of us have been there. Tiny road going in, small parking lot. And they are parking on that street, which the very thought is scary. So I don't think these people are all going to go away as COVID gets under control because they found something they like. And so I think we're going to have to plan for, is there infrastructure that we have to add to make that better? And can we afford it? And how much does it cost? And is there potential, as we've seen at Mission Peak, another one of my popular parks, are we running into too many people at one time, and how do we manage it? Because I think that is, maybe you could say it's a good problem, but I think it's going to have to be viewed as a problem that we need to find a solution for. So I guess I'm mixing up money to spend and how do we do it? But I think people have found us, and I think a whole lot of them are going to keep coming. And we want them to have a good experience. And how do we afford it?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yes, thank you, Director Wieskamp. You're speaking to a very good problem. It's the carrying capacity of our parks, which other national parks have been faced with as well. And I know that this is an area that we keep discussing. I know AGM O'Connor leads that conversation with our planning department with AGM Christina Kelchner. And yes, it will require some, at times in certain locations, a little bit of an investment, of capital investment to be able to address it. But I think it's not capital as much as it will be staffing, because we're not correctly staffed out in the field. And so that's where we will see the largest investment of public dollars, which is a very important concept to understand. Where do we balance our investment of the money, the current dollars that we have? Is it to staff correctly, or is it to be able to mitigate for the ongoing costs of the staff that we currently have? Which we'll have more conversations later.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
Any other comments? I just wanted to say that thank you, Anna. This is a great overview of our responsibilities as a board, and I think it's the first time I've actually seen it graphically, and it really helps. It helps me, and I'm sure it'll help our newer members of the board of directors. If it helped me, it will help them as well. Of course, some of you have been here for a while. It's ingrained in you. So, and
it keeps changing, Dee. It keeps changing.
It does, but you developed that patience part. So thank you very much. And so let's go forward. What is next is on my agenda. I have Deborah Ocker. with the review and status of 2020 wall notes.
Thank you, Director Rosario, and thank you for allowing me to help facilitate this meeting with our board president. Today, I just want to go over the agenda a little bit and make sure I think everyone's familiar with what we're doing today, but we did select one focus topic to talk about before we get to board interest today on redistricting. So after I finish a few other comments, I will turn it over to the Legal and Legislative Affairs team to handle that item. After that, we will roll into the board interest discussions, and Director Rosario will call on each of you to share your thoughts, and we will scribe them. I have Deborah Spalding here to help, and we'll scribe your notes as we've done in the past. We're trying to make this as intimate and casual as possible, but it is a little more formal on Zoom. So, we encourage everybody to be relaxed. And then
Deborah, do you need the slides?
I think I'm okay for now, but I'll ask for the slides in just a moment. And then we do have the opportunity after we get through each of the board members' topics to select one focused topic that we have about 20 or 30 minutes to talk about today. So as we're going through and sharing, we'll see if something bubbles up that makes sense to talk about today that staff doesn't have to do a lot of preparation for. So those are our goals. Then we'll just highlight what's going on at Board Workshop 2 and how the next steps will roll out. And then we have public comment at the end of the meeting. But before I actually ask if there's questions on the wall notes, I did want to just acknowledge what Carol Victor spoke about in her priorities, the transition. So Anna, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the slides again, do you want to do that?
Sure.
And we have been through a lot, right? It's time to take a deep breath and just recognize all the things that we've experienced over the past year. And it really has had an emotional toll on us, a physical toll on us. We've been through, lots of adrenaline rushes and cortisol, and, our resilience has been tested. We've had historic moments, and everything's been happening at an extraordinary speed. And so I think some of the things that Anna walked us through is considering that this past year has been pretty extraordinary. And now after a year-long pandemic, we are going to embark on a new phase of leadership for the district. So I wanted to thank Director Rosario for allowing me to just share a little bit of what I learned at a conference. I attended a finance conference, a virtual conference, and the keynote speaker spoke about the 3 Horizons framework. And I wanted to share that with you here. I'm just giving you a little bite of it. And if it's interesting, we can talk about it more at Board Workshop number 2. But it really does talk about transitions, and I thought it was worth sharing. So next slide, Anna. This is the 3 Horizons framework, and it really is trying to give you a visual of Horizon 1, which are things that are current. They're current contexts, current assumptions, they're the now of what we're doing. We have rules about how we do things. We have infrastructure built in on how we do things. And that's the horizon that we're currently in. We're maintaining stability, kind of a management mindset. And then Horizon 3 is the blue line that starts over on the high right-hand side and goes down. And those are the transformative, emerging paradigms, new ideas, innovations, and things like that. And that's the visionary mindset. And you can see how they cross. And when I saw this chart, I thought, oh, this is so interesting. This is, Rebecca Ryan was the speaker, and she was speaking of this as all governments have gone through this process of change over the last year at least. And then you can see the turquoise arc in the middle, Horizon 2, and that is really where all the actions are transforming. And she actually showed a picture of a trapeze artist. hands of one side of the trapeze and grabbing onto the other. And sometimes it feels that way. There can be excitement in this type of transition. There can be fear in this type of transition, but it is the actions that you're taking to get from one horizon to the other. And in some cases, you're building on change, you're, inviting change, but then there's also the side of resisting change, and all of that is normal. And so as you look at Horizon 1, you're trying to see, over time, certain paradigms lose their fit and they're starting to become outdated. And a lot of it's because of environmental change that's happening, external changes that are happening that are creating that. And then, Horizon 3 sometimes is too new and it hasn't been worked out. The details haven't been worked out, but you can see that over time, Horizon 3 is going to displace the paradigms of Horizon 1. It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of gathering the knowledge, getting the funding, redoing the infrastructure. One of the examples when I was reading about this was the energy sector, right? Where fossil fuels were, that was the Horizon 1 paradigm for so long, stability, that's how everything works. And then as new technology comes in and sustainable energy takes over, you can see that it took a long time, but we're getting there. So that was kind of an example of that. So I thought this was just very interesting to look at as we are going through transition. And one of the things the facilitator walked us through, which we're not going to do today, but she was really focusing on how to find a bridge, how to really respect both horizons, and how to speak of it through values. So there are certain values that come with Horizon 1. And some of them that were thrown out there were stability, established systems, institutional knowledge. And then there are certain, there are certain values with Horizon 3 that are, advancement and progressiveness, new technologies. And so how do you make sure that you can find the bridge, but respect both sides? And so that's kind of what the exercise would go through. And the things that came up in the meeting were things that we talk about here all the time, that Horizon 2, the bridge of Horizon 2 can really be collaboration, communication, listening, building trust, all of those things that we're working on. And so anyways, I wanted to share that as we embark on this workshop today, because we are in a time of great change. So thank you for letting me do that. And with that, I will ask and invite any board members if they would like to talk about the process we have today anymore, or if you would like to ask any questions or have any comments on the board wall notes that were included in your packet. The wall notes, for anyone that's new, is a place where we do summarize all the board members' comments. So some of you say the same thing in your time, and we put that on there once. And we order the wall notes in a way that we want to deliver information back to the board. So we say, okay, based on all the interests that were shared, we think we can cover these topics at workshop number 2, other topics at workshop number 3 through 5. And then certain items will come back to board committees. So you'll have some things going to the executive committee, operations committee, and so on. And so that's the reason the order is there. And then typically we try to let you know a bit of a status update, and that's included in your packet. And so we'll continue to do it that way. With all this talk of transition, we are very interested in hearing from the board. If you would like to modify how the board workshops are done, or be clear with us if you like a certain part of the board workshops that you don't want us to change, we'd like to hear that in your comments as well, so that we can make sure we're giving you what you need through this process. So I'll turn it over to Director Rosario to see if there are any questions before we move on.
Thank you. I really like that little presentation. Any questions, comments from the board? And seeing none, oh, Director Lane.
Hi, I wanted to compliment you on presenting all of this to us. I mean, I have forgotten this with so much happening last year. And I just want to say about these workshops, how important they are and how much I value them, because it is an opportunity for us to talk informally back and forth. And those are rare opportunities for whole board. So anything that can be done to facilitate that communication back and forth in these workshops I really appreciate.
Thank you.
I concur. Anyone else? Great.
Okay.
Seeing none, let's move forward.
Well, with that, we will turn it over to Eric Fueller, and he will introduce the team. We just have a very brief presentation and update on the redistricting process for you.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Eric Fueller, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, and I'm joined by my colleagues Lisa Baldinger and Jason Rosenberg. We're the staff team, along with Carol Victor, that are working on the redistricting process. I know we've spoken with many of you. Actually, I think all the board members already about some of your individual interests as this process moves forward. Ironically, we were prepared to make this presentation about this time last year at workshop number 2, and that obviously got delayed. But with that, I'd like to turn it. Thank you, Lisa. I was going to ask Lisa to bring up some slides, and we can go to the next slide, please. And this is why are we doing this? Well, California state law requires the Park District to check their boundaries and have equitable distribution, but it also gives us a lot of leeway. We can set a lot of the parameters ourselves, and the board members themselves are the ones who ultimately vote on the lines, unlike at the state level where we have the commission, or at the national level where it's actually state legislators often that are redrawing lines for other local units of government. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned before, cross-divisional effort with legal, general manager's office, and then also our GIS team will be helping with the mapping as we move forward. And with that, I will turn it over to Lisa to tell you what we know now.
Good afternoon, Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy and Management Analyst. Thank you to each of our board members for sitting down with us and having initial discussions on the redistricting. What you see before you is some data that our GIS analyst, Cara Betcher, put together. She also put together the map on the former slide. So what you're looking at here, and I apologize, it is a little bit small, is we have the first column is our wards, which because then you can look across horizontally at the rows. So we have our population increase, and you can see that Ward 5, so Director Wieskamp's ward, the population increased the most, and then wards 1, 2, and 6, which are President Rosario, Director Eccles, and Director Lane increased the least in terms of where we're looking at. So that's sort of west is the least, and then over on the east side, the southeast side is the most. So looking at it holistically, based off of 2010 to 27 population estimates, the percent of the East Bay within each of our existing wards has a variance of less than 5%, with the largest districts having 15% of our population and the smallest population districts having 16%. And so where we're starting is a pretty good place, and we'll be continuing our discussions on the next slide or outline what we're looking at as we're going through the redistricting process. So we'll be looking for population balance, which are those percent of how many members of the East Bay are in each of your districts. We'll also be working with a professional consultant to identify communities of interest. On the screen before you, there's a definition for what a community of interest is. We'll also be, of course, looking for geographic continuity, so making sure that each ward has a continual line all around it and isn't sort of an island of multiple spots. And then we'll also be taking into consideration local considerations. So this could be a variety of factors, including parks and other elements. So in terms of where we are in the timeline, we have gone through an RFP process, which we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. And we have selected, we're still in discussions, and we haven't formally contracted, but we've selected the National Demographics Corporation to help guide us in this process, which will be consisting of discussions with our board of directors, an analysis of the census data when it becomes available, and public input. So as I shared, we went through the redistricting process with a posting in November of 2020. We received 3 feedbacks and reviewed their policies. We also, in spring and winter of 2020, had discussions with each of you to understand top priorities. And then our goals for spring of 2021 are to get the National Demographics Corporation under contract to help guide us through this redistricting process. We'll be continuing our discussions with board members. And then we're expecting now that census data should hopefully be available in September or October of this year, which is about a 6 to 7 month delay from what we were initially expecting. But once that's available, we can really hit the ground running. We'll have conducted initial interviews with each board member, and then we'll be able to integrate in the census data, take into consideration those 4 key areas that I shared about population balance and areas of interest, and start drafting out some draft ward proposals that could be presented at a public forum for some initial public input. And then we're hoping that all will go well and we'll be able to finalize our ward boundaries with the consultant and the public input by spring of 2022. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Eric to conclude.
And just the last thing that I would like to just point out is on the delay. The U.S. Census Bureau last month announced that the data wouldn't be released until September 30th this year. In our conversation with the consultant, they believe that California will take about 30 days after they receive the data to make it available to local governments. So we're really looking at toward the end of October to have numbers that we can analyze. And then the districts or the agencies that need to have June elections in 2022 will probably be the first ones that are accounted for by all the different consultants that are involved in redistricting processes throughout the state. So for November 2022 elections like ours, will probably come online a little bit later. So it is a delay, but we are prepared when the information gets passed down to move quickly. And I would like to invite Jason to speak a little bit, if you would like, about the consultant that we're working with, as I believe he has worked with this firm in the past.
Eric, Jason Rosenberg, Assistant District Counsel. I have had the pleasure of working with National Demographics Corporation in my prior role as city attorney. They're very experienced in California law and helping agencies, public, whether it's cities, counties, special districts, adjust ward boundaries, as well as move to district elections. They understand the law well, and they're very well versed in providing us the service we want. And they're also very flexible, and they're good listeners, so they're able to really work with what we need. So we can, take the feedback from the board and provide a process that is going to be appropriate for the Park District. And we should, as Eric said, I want to reiterate, based on the statutes and the timelines required by the county elections, which we will confirm the timelines when those come out, but we should have enough time to meet the deadlines that we need, even with the delayed census numbers coming out.
Thanks, Jason. And with that, I think we're available for questions at this time.
Great. Questions from the board? None? I have one. Director Lane.
Is there something in law that says how equal we need to be in terms of population? Within 2%, within 10%? Or is that something we decide ourselves?
I can take a first stab at that. So there is, it's case law, federal and state case law that really governs on that. And they need to be balanced. And there's not a specific 2%. It's a rule of thumb, and you have to take in other factors, but 5 to 10 is okay. It's kind of been seemed to be okay by other cases, but it's case law, so it's not a hard and fast number, but it takes into factor the other factors that Lisa mentioned: topography, geography, cohesiveness, communities of interest. So you need to factor those all in. The population is kind of the first one, but we'll be sure to kind of make sure that that is first and foremost.
Thank you.
Director Corbett.
So along those same lines, are there any other guidelines? I know there have been issues out there in the world with regard to districts that represent various different demographics and how that all plays. And there have been challenges based on districts that don't seem to be equitable in that way. Are there other guidelines besides the percentage size of the districts that we should be looking at?
Yes, thanks for that question, Director Corbett. The factor that I think you're alluding to is the kind of concept under the California Voting Rights Act and the Federal Voting Rights Act about diluting one group's vote by virtue of how a district is drawn up. That, as of now, and cases can change, but as of now, that is pretty much limited to at-large elections. So an entire public agency where there are at large, so small concentrated groups of a certain background or ethnicity or race do not have a say because they're in the minority, but they're a large minority. For us, we're district elections or wards, that's much rarer because when we're drawing those districts, we're being cognizant of demographics. And that's something that we will definitely take into consideration to make sure we comply with federal and state law.
Okay. Are there any other guidelines, any other issues we need to be looking at?
Mostly it's the factors that is laid out in the statute by California reapportionment. So it's topography, geography, cohesiveness, compactness of territory. So we don't have those weird kind of what, classically considered a gerrymandered district, and then communities of interest. So if you're complying with those four and the populations are balanced, it's presumed that you're going to be compliant with the statute. But that's something that obviously when we get the data back, that's where we can really dig in and understand what we need to do to make sure we're compliant with applicable laws.
Okay, and I have one last question. When you get back to us next, whether it's as individuals or as a group, you haven't spoken too much about what happens with that, whether we meet with you individually or we come together as a group. When you have the data, I'm talking about when you get the data and we can look at these various elements that you just mentioned, will you have that defined for us so we can make decisions, making sure we hit the guidelines?
Yes, definitely. And our consultant is also well-versed in this, so he'll be able to provide it in an easy to understand format as well. So it's not just the lawyer speak.
And will that have to happen after the census data is available, or are some of the other issues available to start thinking about? Just the census data? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and Eric and Lisa or Carol, feel free to jump in, but essentially, once we get the census data, that's where we can kind of really start to analyze those factors.
Okay, thank you.
And I do, Director Corbett, I do anticipate continued conversation between now and then with board members, either at an individual basis or as a group, or maybe people who have wards that touch each other. We might have those two board members in a conversation as well. So we'll continue the conversation as we move forward.
Thank you very much. That'll be helpful.
Director Lane and then IGM Carol.
Well, the other thing that we have that's unique is we've got 73 parks. And so when you talk about local considerations, if you do huge shifts in any way, somebody may end up with a whole lot more regional parks and visitor centers than somebody else. And so I think that's, I think that's pretty much unique to us. And there have been some pretty interesting conversations about that, I will say, in the past. For me, I have Mount Diablo State Park in the middle of my ward, and that's not a regional park. So, people have been concerned over the years that I have a few regional parks. And at the same time, you know, I've got this big park in the middle that people sometimes think I have a lot to say about. So it does make it interesting. And likewise, visitor centers. Who has a lot of visitor centers? And does somebody want that visitor center? So we have a couple of unique elements that make for real interesting conversations every 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely, Director Lane. And I know that park equity and also the visitor center issue have historically been issues that have been taken into consideration. And I don't see that changing this time around either.
Interim General Manager Victor, please.
Yes, and one of the things that has been touched on but not discussed yet is the public process and to what extent we want to have community meetings regarding redistricting. California law changed quite a bit with regards to cities and has a pretty prescriptive, I think, pretty prescriptive process that you have to follow for city districting. I wouldn't suggest that as a model. I think that's more than we would need, but the board may want us to include 1 or 2 community meetings to solicit public input on redistricting. I think as we get closer to getting the census data, we should really set this either for a study session at a regular board meeting or a standalone meeting. And so the board and members of the public can really input in terms of give us information on what those community interests are that we are collectively identifying and want taken into account.
Great. Director Corbett, you had another question.
Well, I was just going to say, and following up on what Director Lane said, that I'm assuming when the time comes when we have the next conversation, we'll also have that data, acreages and parks and all those sorts of things within districts. I think that will be helpful. You know, each of us are very familiar with what's in our districts, but others might not know what's in other people's districts. So I think that is a really important thing for us all to know as well.
Great. Any other questions? Interim General Manager Carol Victor stole my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then last question is, at the end, who decides what?
We do.
The board does.
The board does?
Yeah, I mean, we'll tell you to the extent the law informs any of the decisions that you're making, we will tell you what the legal constraints are, but otherwise it's really a board's decision in terms of where to draw the lines.
Okay, because I know in some states, the electeds are excluded. There's a specific commission or whatever. Director Wieskamp.
I think the idea of a one topic only meeting for the board where we can get a better understanding of the potential changes and how they affect both sides. Maybe I can't believe it's going to be more than 2 of us looking at a change, but we can see the whole spectrum of it, whether we're talking about visitor centers or trails or all of those things. And maybe it might even be a live meeting where we can look at real stuff rather than screens. But I think that'll help us understand potential changes that we all mostly agree on and that we think will work for the public, because that's what we try to do all the time.
I totally agree with that separate meeting concept. Anyone else?
Thanks for your future work, Eric, Lisa, and Jason.
Yes. You have your work.
Jason having to redistrict a cities from at-large elections to district elections within 90 days. So he had that experience of doing that. So it's been very helpful to us.
Great.
Good.
Director Corbett.
So I just thought of something else. I just wonder, since we're going to have all these numbers with the data, obviously our primary purpose is to do the redistricting, which is required by law. But I'm wondering if that data will also be available to look at some of the other ways we map ourselves, you know, the various other planning districts and all that. I mean, I think once we have that data, it would be a good idea to look and see how that impacts how many, you know, what the population is in each of the planning districts as well. Since we're working towards, you know, equity, I think that will be an important thing to take a look at too with that data. So hopefully that's something, maybe I can put that on my list today. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Excellent. So see no other questions or comments? Are we ready for the next agenda item?
Yes, thank you, Director Rosario. Thank you, Eric, Lisa, and Jason. So that was a great update. Now we are ready for the main event. And I think unless we have any volunteers of who would like to go first, Director Rosario might have an order that he has in mind. I want to just let everyone know that we have Deborah Spalding and Catherine Dundee are here to take notes with us. And I think we have it set up so that we can keep a little bit of a whiteboard on the side of your computer, like a PowerPoint, and you'll still be able to see some people. If you ever want us to drop the screen so you can see each other, please just let us know and we're happy to do that.
Okay, I'm just gonna go in order of how I see people on the screen. It's gonna go Director Waspy, Director Corbett, Director Coffey, Director Wieskamp, Director Eccles, and then Director Lane, and then myself. I will follow up the rear.
Okay, is somebody going to remind us when our 10 minutes are up?
Yes.
Because sometimes we've gotten a lot longer. Sorry.
Yes, Director Lane, we do suggest 10 minutes and I'm not going to stop you, but yeah, I might wave my hand if,
Let us know. Okay.
if we're going too long. We're not going to be too strict on that.
Okay.
Probably will be sorry. Knowing all of us.
All right.
We also have Yolanda Burial Knight here to assist us. She turned on her video, so she's also here to support us.
Well, if you want me to do, to do the 10 minutes, I could do that.
Why don't you do that for us, Yolanda?
Director Lane, if my face pops up, that means you're 10 minutes. How about that? Then you can decide how long you want to go after that.
You see, Yolanda, the sense will sum up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So let the race begin. Director Waspy, you are first up.
Can you guys see, can you see the screen, the board workshop screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so Waspy, where is it? There it is.
There we go. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So I guess I have three major things that I consider the major things that are of importance to me, and then a million other little things. I think first off would be wildfire prevention and suppression, mostly prevention, pre-fire mitigation, and the tree die-off, and how we're going to deal with that. And I know we have a plan, but I'm referring to specifically if we're talking $40 million for one park. I think that a bigger role would be planning ahead with our legislators, because we're going to need funding for this, and I don't think we can afford that. My second would be sustainability. I think we've started in a correct direction, but I think we have a great opportunity right now. If I hate to bring this up, but if we ever get Peralta Oaks North in operation, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to really become what we say we always want to be, and that's a sustainable organization that uses all of the methods, whether it be how we build the building, with sustainable materials, with recycled materials, how we plan our work sites, to deal with waste. And I consider just the elimination of waste as probably one of the most important things we can do. And an environmentally preferred purchasing policy. I think we've talked about that a lot of times, and I hope you include the board in on those discussions. I think that would go a long ways to do things like eliminating plastic. I know Director Rosario's talked about for years, and both of us know the amount of, if you all knew the amount of plastic bags we use in this park district in 1 year or in 1 month, it's incredible. We really should look deeply into figuring out how to crack that nut, and then just all of the things that we do that aren't reusable or things we don't need that could contribute to a waste stream. My third one would be, I think we really need to deal with the idea that we've all had before and we talked about, and then COVID kind of knocked it off the block, is a district-wide parcel tax. I think everything that Dr. Alvarez and Carol has talked about, and we all know, something's going to happen, and it's probably, when we do get back to quote normal, we're probably going to face a lot of challenges financially. So I really think we need to do, as Dr. Alvarez talked about, right sizing our staffing and things like that. And the only way we're going to do it is with a district-wide parcel tax. And I would like to see us go full speed ahead on that one. And, you know, I'm remiss in that I think the legislative committee saw the latest government affairs polling survey that they did, and it was a district-wide survey. I mean, all of the park district, demographically balanced, and 600 participants. So we're working in the direction, but I'd really like to push in that direction. And you know, I think there were 71% of the folks saying that they would likely, you know, and these are likely voters, and Eric knows more than I do. And Eric, maybe could I ask Eric if you were to come in and talk about that for a second? I'd like to see this come before the full board. Eric, can
sure,
you
just
correct Eric incorrectly?
Sure. I mean, if it's okay, I just briefly, it was a Lake Research Partners. They're a nationally known firm. They did a survey of non-voter, or not just voters, for us earlier last year, and they went out in December. And we specifically did 600 voters so that there would be 400 that would be voting in the November election, or all 600 would be voting in the November election and 400 would be voting in the June election. And that would give us a sense of whether November or June would be better. And actually there was no difference. But we'd be happy to share that data with the full board or with each of you individually, whatever the board prefers. But it was promising, and I think the firm that we had felt very positive about it.
Thank you, Eric. And so I hope we can really focus on that, and I think we ought to do it sooner rather than later, simply because of all the goodwill we've fostered through being the only game in town throughout this COVID experience, and we've had lots of new visitors. So I'd really like to. That's one of my big priorities. And then some of the smaller ones we've talked about before, but I think we really need to work on our Roberts Pool. We've got to find funding for that. Lake Chabot dredging, Lake Temescal dredging, Jewel Lake dredging. We talk about that, and I know it's daunting money-wise, but I think these are some of the parks that are and the people we want to serve. We keep saying we want to serve folks, but we're not. I think providing them with recreation and swimming experiences is a real important thing, and we're losing a lot of, or not losing a lot of them, but we have the potential to lose a lot of them without addressing these issues. The Garin to Pleasanton Ridge Trail connection, I'm very excited about. With the purchase of the Chenard property, I hope we can fast track that or do some tours with communities that will really benefit from this. Maybe private tours, maybe board tour type of things. The Louis property trail connection, I don't know what, I think that's a political tie-up at this point, but I surely hope the Guerin to Vallejo Mills and then to Vargas Plateau is a real important connection, and that railroad crossing is a priority for me. N3 and Tesla purchases. I know it's another expense, but I hope again our legislative department can work politically to make that work. I'm totally excited about the opportunities with Healthy Parks, Healthy People. I think that, we, throughout the studies that Legislative Affairs has done, the psychological health benefits of parks and open spaces, I think were proven out. And I think Mona and her multicultural wellness walks and all of the stuff that Mona has done to create an atmosphere to come to the parks and get their benefits, and working with what healthcare agency is that, but all the healthcare agencies, I think, and to work with those folks to create the Healthy Parks, Healthy People benefits. I think this is very important. I'm concerned, I don't know what the status is, but I think it is a priority to get Ardenwood Farm contract done. I think that those fields have lain fallow for a long time, and I think people really expect a farm out of Ardenwood. I'd like to see us, in the near future, gear up and restart the volunteer programs. I think we're really, really missing them. I know the volunteers miss being here. In fact, they're here, as Director Lane says, they're here all the time in the parks. I see park volunteers all the time in the parks. They just don't have their shirts on, and they want to get back to work and doing the good work for the district. I'd like to see us resolve the issues at Cull Canyon, the reservoir, which has just been silted in, and it belongs to Alameda County Flood Control, but everybody assumes it belongs to the regional parks, and it's a real eyesore. And there's a great opportunity for trails around that lake and for getting people out and doing hiking and healthy stuff. Just as a final, I guess, all of the great things we do in the Park District, I guess I personally want to work on it. The UN Day of Peace that we have, International Day of Peace at Lake Chabot, I really want to promote that. And I guess that'll be an individual thing that I'll work towards.
Very nice list, Director Waspy. Very nice. I think Deb's taking notes, and we might add Vargas Railroad Crossing, Vargas Trail Railroad Crossing. I think she missed that. You said that pretty quickly. And then under dredging, we'll just add Jewel Lake, even though we don't know if it will be a dredging, but just put that there. And I think otherwise we got some good notes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Director Corbett is next.
Thank you. I like Dennis's list. I'm just going to put that on my list too and add some. No, especially the cleaner, greener equipment and vehicle policy. I would like to see more specific work done on that. And I know we are definitely trending in that direction with some of the work we're doing. I have some overarching issue areas that are important to me, and I'll try to talk a little bit about a few park issues in my district, but not too many. Obviously, I very much appreciate the president's direction towards concerns about the environment and climate change as his theme for this year. Very much appreciate that. I'm very sensitive to these issues that we discuss with regard to climate and the weather that will create problems for us, for our facilities and for our lands along the shoreline. So very, very concerned about what we do and how we plan ahead to protect our shoreline areas. I think we really have an obligation because of the amount of beautiful open space that we steward, that we set an example in our communities. So alongside that, under my theme of the environment, to continue to have very strong outreach programs for environmental education for our youth and for everyone for that matter. So to continue that, but also to do more, to dig down and see whether we are doing enough to provide environmental education for some of our underserved communities. I know we do that now. I do think we can do more. And I'm very much interested in what we've been talking about, finding more data about the communities we serve. So we do understand where the underserved communities are, where the economically challenged communities are. We need to do more of that, and especially looking at some of the more southern parts of the district. We do a lot more in the north, a little more in the south would be good as well. So the delivery of environmental education. I too am concerned about wildfire prevention. I'll just put that as a check mark. And then my next overall arching area would be equity, and that would be in the delivery of our services, the maintenance of our facilities, and where we place facilities. I'd really like to take a good, strong look at, where, if we could take a map and we could sort of map out where we have our visitor centers, where we are providing our environmental education programs. I would really like to see that. I know in the past we've used maps for metro areas and those sorts of things, and those are important, but having more knowledge within the metro areas when we're doing planning about what cities are in those metro areas and taking a look at the data of those communities within those metro areas, I think will help us in more equitable planning. And I know that's something that we are also working towards already this year. It's something I've mentioned in the past, so I'm happy to see the success that we've had.
So for that, Director Corbett, we can put mapping data for where we provide services.
Absolutely, yes, and where we place facilities. Right. So that we can make informed planning decisions in the future. Another equity issue in the delivery of our services, ensuring access. And when I talk about access, I'm talking about physical access. We've talked a lot about working with our local transportation agencies and partnering with them to make sure that people from all communities can get to some of our parks that may be of a greater distance to their neighborhoods. I think we've talked a lot about that. I think we need to do more about it. I'm not discounting the amazing work that is done by the foundation and some of our other programming to bring students for field trips and those sorts of things. But I'm talking about even day-to-day being able to jump on the bus and get to a park, just regular transportation. And then the other thing about access for me that you've heard me talk about a million times, and it's very hard to explain, but we pick up a lot of really nice parcels of property that no one else wanted to develop because they're cut off by railroad tracks, by a freeway, and neighbors are, far away, and a kid can't just jump on a bike and get there. In my district in particular, obviously Tidewater falls into that category. Martin Luther King falls into that category as well. So figuring out a way to build a bridge, and I'm not talking about concrete bridges, but whether they are, programs, days where streets are closed except to bicycle traffic, even some sort of bridge that's not physical, but allows people to find these parks and makes it easier for people to get to the parks. And I can talk more about that at some point, but building those those bridges. I'm also very concerned about the fiscal issues. I very much agree with Dennis. We should be looking at how we knit together and coordinate our various revenue measures. And I think it's extremely important that we get very, very serious about figuring out when's the next time we're going to the ballot to make sure that we have the necessary revenue to, have more people working in our parks and also to plan for the opening of those parks that we have land banked. And we have to be very serious about that. And we have to be serious about it too, because we do know after COVID, property tax may plateau and take a dive. And just knowing that we've grown so large and we have so much we need to do, we need to have some very serious strategic planning as to when we may be going out to look for ways to find more revenue to bring it in from the ballot box. Obviously, we continue our local and state advocacy that helps us with those things as well. But I think that is extremely important. And then the last issue I will bring up is I'd really like to work more on community and board interface. From time to time, board members are supported with the information they need to go out and speak to various community groups. Obviously, that's all been on Zoom recently, but I'd really like to see that support across the board for all board members when they wish to go out and tell the story of the Park District. In my district, there's a lot of groups that discuss climate change and what's going to happen when the sea level rises. You might imagine that, especially in the Alameda area. And I'd like to be able to be out there interfacing with those groups and communicating with them what the district is doing and how we can all work together to plan for that future. I'd really like to see more support for the board to be able to be out there and be spokespeople on behalf of the district. I think it's an important planning issue for us, because as we advocate and we go to the ballot and we talk to our legislators, we want as many people as possible knowledgeable about the amazing work that the Park District does. So I'd really like to see a little more work towards that. And the last thing I will say is very happy to see, again, with regard to equity and parks in Ward 4, very happy to see that on the Operations Committee agenda in a few months, we are going to be discussing the Shoreline Center at Martin Luther King. It's a great building. It could use a little work, and it could become a really amazing place for the East Oakland community to take advantage of and to gather. And also, I know that our folks who work with renting facilities, it could be a really great facility also to rent to groups to bring in a little revenue as well. So I think that's everything on my list. Thank you. Did I do it in 10 minutes?
You had 47 seconds to spare.
Okay, well, in that case,
Throw it in there.
I yield my time to the next board member.
Thank you, Director Corbett. You had a lot of details that we took notes on that didn't end up on the whiteboard, but we've captured all of those.
Thank you very much.
My turn, Dee? All right. Well, thank you for those extra 47 seconds, Ellen. I appreciate it, your courtesy. In looking at my list and my notes from last year, they look a lot alike. So this should go hopefully fairly quickly, because I'd be repeating myself to just recite again merits of all these priorities as I did last year. I do like the way Ellen categorized her priorities, and I think I'm doing a little bit of that as well by organizing them into what I view as big ticket items, big visions, big projects, and therefore perhaps a little more long-term than others. And by long-term, I simply mean I have no expectation that they'll be done tomorrow, right? But I don't want to characterize long-term as meaning, you know, one of these projects that are going to be around for 10 or 15 years. And I have some more focused, shorter-term priorities that I'm listing, and then more operational efforts that I just want to continue to support that are already underway. And before just getting into more specifics, I find myself every year thinking I'm leaving off my list the concept of prioritizing land acquisition. And I know I noted this last year, and I think the reason I do it is, of course, we have a workshop devoted to land acquisition. But I think it's more because I don't necessarily prioritize land acquisition as opposed to view it as part of our mission and purpose. In other words, we exist to create more open space and preserve and conserve habitat and just wilderness, and it's what we do, it's what we exist for. So I'm going to make that note, and so that I don't feel like I'm missing as part of my priority, you know, continuing to meet our mission of land acquisition. Two large park projects in my ward that I continue to follow closely with our planners are Clayton Ranch and Deer Valley. And I'm absolutely thrilled to see the Deer Valley process opening up with its first community meeting, public input meeting for development of the first phase of opening that regional park at the Roddy Ranch Golf Course. That's coming up in a week or so, I believe, March 11th. I noted that, again, I didn't see Clayton Ranch on our list of capital expenditures this year, and I met with Christina and Brian about that. And the feedback I got is Clayton Ranch has had some regulatory permitting issues that have delayed the anticipated process and progress of that new regional park. It's the board will remember, I think it was 3 years ago, we visited the future staging area on Marsh Creek Road for Clayton Ranch, and at that point it was envisioned to move faster. So I think what I heard from Christina and Brian is that it can be moved along faster if it also proceeds in phases, for instance, like we're doing with Deer Valley. The Delta Trail is always on my list, primarily because there's WW funding for it. I understand barriers exist to moving on it, but it should be among those projects that are on everybody's radar. I think I've talked every year about the fact that we're now 20 years, or somewhat more than 20 years since a study was done of our programs for family camping, creating campgrounds, and that study noted that the park district really needed to develop family campgrounds in Contra Costa, particularly northern Contra Costa. Jim O'Connor updated that study, I believe, in 2014, which continued to note the need to develop family camping. Mount Diablo's it right now. And my wife's family, my wife will tell you, she grew up in my hometown here of Hercules. Their idea of vacations was going to Brandon Island, the state park. So it continues to be a strong need in my list. I'd like to and would hope that we can move closer to actually planning for this, either at Port Costa at the Brickyard property, which has been identified, or Jersey Island. And Jersey Island has potential. We're waiting for feedback from the sanitary district that owns it as to what their plans are for Jersey Island. But we've got two locations, and it's an important facet of future development in my ward. And Bev Lane noted the Errata Ranch project, and completing the barn rebuilding is an important part of that. Bob Doyle used to cringe every time I'd say it, but I'd say it anyway. And I know it makes Deborah cringe. She's just too polite not to. And that's when I describe Arata Ranch as a future Ardenwood, maybe a smaller version of Ardenwood. In other words, a educational turn of the century dairy farm operation, complete with some cows.
5 cows.
And so, you know, that's just something that excites me to think about. Again, I know it's not tomorrow. But speaking of tomorrow, or things we can be working on as of tomorrow and or have been, and more focused, are 2 trail projects, the Point Pinole to Point Wilson project and the Marsh Creek extension to Round Valley. It's actually stuck at Concord Avenue in Brentwood right now, and the developer there was supposed to have built the trail over to John Marsh's historic site, and that isn't underway yet. It's an important project, and both of these are in planning fairly well along. And I want to particularly stress how appropriate I think both those projects are for our build funding application for federal transportation money. They just fit all the categories, especially Point Pinole, Point Wilson, given the underserved communities surrounding that area. So they're I think very available for federal and state funding and other sources. Getting very focused. Programs I'd like to see pursued vigorously would be the extension of what we describe as the Richmond Rangers, the Adventure Crew program for inner city kids, and extending that to Antioch and Pittsburgh, and finding some, either those or equivalent programs for Antioch, Pittsburgh would be something I'd very much like to see. Another program that I get the sense is going slower than it ought to be, and that is the district's commitment to replacing chem toilets throughout the district. I don't know, I stopped seeing those lists for whatever reason, but you know, 3 years ago, I convinced very easily, because he agreed, the general manager to get in the budget a specific conversion of the chem toilets at Black Diamond that support the visitor center at Great House and the mine. And you know, it was budgeted 3 years ago and it's still not done. And we're going to open the mine exhibit when COVID is past its threat, and we're going to have lots of people visiting the mine and the visitor center. So I say that to be specific, but my more general priority is it's just the most comments I get when I'm out in the parks talking to people with my little park district kind of paraphernalia around me, so I look official. Why don't you have nicer toilets? You know, and this tends to be in areas where we still serve by chem toilets. I'd like to see administratively that there be a continued effort to expand HR resources in order to support employee services and our union relationships. I think that department is still under-resourced. But you know, we're going to have a new HR director, or do, and she's a lawyer. I think that's going to help a lot. Not that I'm biased toward lawyers, but yes, I am. I guess I am. These I don't normally or just readily put in my my priorities, because I view them as what I'm doing is just strongly supporting ongoing operational efforts that the organization has as priorities, and that's as Dennis spoke of, the wildfire prevention programs and resources we're putting into that. Our diversity goals, workforce diversity goals that are being handled by our special diversity committee in terms of steering. I'm very supportive of the trail use working group, because as Ann pointed out, these volumes we're encountering leads to more conflict. We're all hearing that, and hopefully those issues can be addressed with everybody in the room. a side note, I'd love to see us when the COVID crisis is over to conduct more land bank public tours, because my ward, we got a lot of acres land banked, and people are always asking, when can we just go see that property? For instance, the Brickyard in Port Costa is just this gorgeous property. We ought to have some a ranger or naturalist do some community program tours out there. And lastly, I'm dying, at Dennis when talks about the volunteer program, I'm dying for the ambassador program to start up again. It's just driving me crazy. The most fun I have, Dee asked earlier, about our hobbies that we should share. My hobby is the Park District and that ambassador program, which is, doing tables and booths and just talking parks and trails and programs with everyday people who come up to you and say, boy, I love your parks. Boy, I love what you do. And it's just a really gratifying hobby I have with that program in particular, and my wife. So I hope we put a lot of energy into it when it comes back. That's it. I hope I'm okay on time.
Very, very nice list, Director Coffey, and we will make sure we include the detailed list of toilet conversions. I think we skipped that one year to see if anyone would notice, and you did notice. So we'll include that in Board Workshop number 3 again.
Thank you, Deborah.
And thank you for sharing your hobby. I don't know if any of the other board members can want to go back and share any hobbies before we move to the next person.
Not yet. Director Director Wieskamp.
Are you going to give Dennis another chance? Well, I'm going to be really optimistic and say that I will not continue to say that the Dumbarton Quarry Campground is going to open this spring, or I may have to do something ghastly to Jim O'Connor. He has promised me. So that's off my list, other than visiting. You listen to our list, and I can tell you there's one requisite. It's called money. Money, whether we're buying land, opening land, hiring staff, making studies, whatever we're doing, we're going to have to figure a couple of creative ways that Deborah will have money to help us do all of these things. So fiscally, I would like to know if that study included the total of both counties and how people feel about it. LARPD laid off 22 employees. Yes, they need money, and I suspect up in eastern Contra Costa County, they do need money also for park uses. I think we all have to face fun and games of meeting with the public and look at a master plan this year sometime. Doesn't have to be immediate, but I think we need to do that. And I suspect as this organization has grown a great deal since I joined it, some reorganization may make sense. Staff could probably help us with that. When it comes to trails, either of the Niles Canyon trails would be wonderful, whether it's by the railroad or up on the San Francisco property. I know there's a problem with one property owner in between, but maybe we can manage that. The one thing I was told when I came on this board was you can never have too much open space property that you are protecting. So for me, Tesla is very important to keep working with the state and everybody else, and the N3 Ranch. It would be a magnificent piece of property to add. Whether we can do what we can do with it in the long run, I don't know. But once it's gone, it's gone. It's not in my ward, but let me tell you, I think one of the next connections I hope will open is at Roddy Ranch. I think those people in that part of your district deserve some trails to be open. So I fully support that. When it comes to dead trees, this is not just our issue. This is not just a small part of Northern California. There's a lot of state land and federal land. Why don't we try to work together and come up with a common way of handling dead trees? Do you burn them? Do you chop them up? Can you find some way to move them? I don't know what you do, but it makes no sense for just us. It makes all of us working together. I certainly support underserved communities. We've been doing a great job in the past, but we can expand it. And sometimes we forget one underserved community, and that are seniors who are in facilities of all types. The last few years, we've been reaching out to the VA hospital here in Livermore, and I think they're really suffering now. Think about who can't visit them, who has in the past. And so whatever we can do in this coming year when it's allowed to get them out to places and give them some new things to learn about, I think they would really appreciate it. Another common issue that I think we should work with the county, other cities, is homeless. The issue is not going away. There may not be one perfect solution, but it just makes sense, a subcommittee or whatever, to look at the issues and see how we can not just push people around, but make it work as best we can. And I'll finish up by saying again, it's money. We want to treat our employees well. We want to have enough employees. We want to expand trails, open parks, buy land. We want to do all these good things, upgrade our equipment, how we do it. No plastic anywhere. It's all going to cost money. So we're trusting Deborah, you and some others can help us find new sources of money and that we will spend it well. That's it.
Excellent list.
Thank you, Anne.
I start with money and end with money, but
I do appreciate that. District does focus on our financial stability, and that's what keeps us strong. So
we've been very, very good.
I agree. Director Eccles.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for all the great comments so far. So I will also start with some overarching themes and then try to quickly get into more Ward 1 specific issues. But in terms of the overarching themes, diversity, equity, and inclusion is just right there as my #1 priority, and including both equitable access to parks and services, and as well as a workforce that truly reflects our community at all levels, at staff, management, and looking at what barriers might exist in terms of recruitment and retention and promotions, and as well, of course, with our parks. When I know we're already doing this, and I want to make sure, and I certainly want to acknowledge the work underway, but looking at the barriers to access for our parks, like why, first of all, the data that we're collecting now on who's using the parks and who isn't and why not is critical. And then of course, the next phase after that is trying to specifically address those why nots. So transportation issues, Director Corbett already talked a little bit about that. Proximity to parks, there are still some opportunities to open parks that are close to some of our underserved communities, providing access to parks over freeways, over train lines. Right, we're doing some of that, but these are all opportunities to do more. And of course, that my particular passion is our underserved youth and making sure that we can expand on existing programs and targeted specifically for what the communities are asking for, so that we can really meet the needs of our underserved youth. And to that end, I know that I saw in the notes that we weren't able to make progress on the Whitney Dotson Fund last year because of COVID, but I really hope this is something that we can work on. I'm happy to work on it as well, if I can be helpful to the foundation, because this was money or a fund to be created to carry on some of the programs that Director Dotson specifically worked on with underserved youth. And I think that would be a great way of honoring my predecessor, but also to provide those opportunities that are desperately needed. I also agree on other broad reaching issues like climate change, and certainly that includes wildfire prevention, the trees that are now dying off, and sea level rise. Others have talked about that, so I won't use my 10 minutes on that. Of course, environmental sustainability. I think Dennis and Director Corbett both talked about that, Director Waspy and Director Corbett, so thank you for that. And fiscal sustainability as well. And Anne, I appreciate you talking about the homeless situation, because that is, that is something that, of course, we're facing across the district, and it's not an issue that we can just put our head in the sand about, so to speak. So yeah, if there's a way that we can try to work constructively with our neighbors on how to address the issue and the people behind the issue, it's a growing challenge for folks who are unhoused. Okay, so Ward 1 specific. So my number one priority remains for Ward 1, creating a regional park at Point Malate as envisioned in the master plan. And this is a great opportunity to preserve our natural and cultural resources, our shoreline, habitat, and also provide parkland in close proximity to underserved communities in Richmond and other nearby communities. And so I will certainly continue to work on that, and with our staff and team and other stakeholders. As in addition, I really want to bump up as a priority negotiating an easement from Chevron between Point Malate and Point San Pablo for the former Terminal 4 properties. As you know, as I understand it, this was part of an agreement that Chevron entered into back in 2009 to deliver on a commitment that they'd made in a letter agreement with the State Lands Commission. And so really want to see if we can nail that down. I know that staff is working on it, and I appreciate the hard work underway, but this would be a really great thing to get done in 2021. And the Point Malate Trail, glad to see real progress being made there, as included in the wall notes. And so I just would say to the team, keep your foot on the gas. That's another important one. And then I certainly concur with Colin on the Point Pinole to Point Wilson Trail connection. This is a great project and truly a great opportunity for the Build Grant. It's a commute corridor. It connects, I believe it's the last remaining gap in the San Francisco Bay Trail, at least on our properties. And it is in very close proximity to a number of different underserved communities. So this is just a really, really great project, and excited to make some progress on that, hopefully. And then finally, a couple of other things. Can you guys still hear me? It got kind of quiet.
Nope.
Okay, you can still hear me.
Yes, we can still hear you.
You're all muted. Okay, good. Good protocol. Okay. So as I think all of us are experiencing in our wards, the crowding of trails, the increasing tension between hikers and bicyclists and equestrians and dogs and everybody. And so I certainly want to give a shout out to the Trail User Working Group for the work that they're doing. But I did want to call to attention just one particular area that I hope staff can focus on. I know that it's already on Brian's radar, but wanted to just mention the Spine Bay Trail between Point Isabel and Marina Bay. There's like a 1 mile section there that it gets very, very crowded, and it's some near misses in terms of bicycle traffic and other folks using that trail. And again, I recognize this is a problem across our parks, but that's one I particularly wanted to call out. And Albany Beach is another one in the sense that, because of this beautiful expanded beach and trail connection by Golden Gate Fields, we're seeing even more use. Of course, we're seeing it because of COVID as well, but this is a place where it's very, very popular with families now, with dogs and dog owners, with kiters. It's an extremely important destination for our kiting community. And so I just want to make sure that it's safe for all of our park users together, because it is not a very big piece of land and there's a lot of different uses going on. And so that's something I want to work on with our staff. And then nearing the end of my list here, Jewel Lake, Colin, oh no, actually, I guess Dennis had talked about the Jewel Lake as one of the lakes that needs dredging. I'm really happy that the feasibility study is underway, and of course we'll see what results from that. But I do hope that I suspect that some form of dredging will be indicated, and I really hope that we can move forward quickly with that. This is a treasure for so many East Bay families, and I get a lot of communications about this. This is a place that people feel very, very emotional about. And then finally, just to keep it out there in terms of a long-term goal, is the Point Pinole Visitor Center that I understand is a ways off because we're now focusing on the Tilden Environmental Education Center, but just want to put it there. Just keep it on the radar. And that, I think, is my list.
Thank you, Director Eccles. Now, did we get the
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
down here address the Spine Bay Trail? Did we get that quite right?
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me
Yeah, I see it.
have to.
It was the one between Point Isabel and I think north of that. Was that right?
Right. Yeah, it's between Point Isabel and, sorry, let me just pull back my notes to get you the exact names here. Between Point Isabel and Marina Bay. So specifically between the Point Isabel Bridge and the Meeker Slough Bridge.
And then for ensure safe user interface, that was at Albany Beach and the trail, correct? Yeah.
Mostly that was more Albany Beach because there's so many families and kiters and others using that beach now. I think that use is compatible for everybody, but I just want to make sure that we are looking at future design in a way that that enhances the safety there.
Thank you for that clarification.
Elizabeth, on that last one, I think you were referring to a spur trail rather than Spine Bay.
Well, I think it's actually a spine. People call it different things, but
okay.
My understanding
that area.
So it's Spine Trail at the.
It's
there. Yeah, that's got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll follow up on the details.
You know where it is.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, really, we'll find it.
President Rosario, may I interrupt for just a second?
Yes, please.
We had, I let somebody enter the meeting and all it has is iPhone. Is there any way you can identify yourself so that I can change your name? It's the person that came into the meeting on his or her iPhone. Yes. If you could
Well, we saw Rick for a minute there. Was that Rick?
No, the person unmuted themselves. So you can speak again, sir or ma'am.
An unknown visitor.
Well, they were getting ready to talk and then somebody.
Looks like they might have dropped off.
Yeah, they dropped off. Okay.
Maybe they'll come back in.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot to say, if I have 30 seconds, I forgot to say my hobbies. My hobbies are hiking and politics, kind of a hobby, and and travel. Used to be travel. Hopefully it will be again someday. So.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. And then Director Lane.
Okay, thank you. This has been really interesting to listen to everybody. And so while I was listening, I added a few more things. But and I've grouped them a little. But the number one for me is that we need to get all of our employees vaccinated. I mean, that is my priority. And I want to I thank Captain Love and others for working on this, because it looks like we do have field staff and emergency workers able to, eligible to be vaccinated. When you look out at the parks, we have at least a 30% increase, and we have fewer staff. And so we have got to make the staff that is not able to get there now as safe as possible while their kids get back to school, and we need to get them out there in the field. Things are looking kind of skimpy, and so we want people to love our parks, and we want them to understand how much we take care of them and serve them. And right now we're shy of staff that I think with vaccinations will help. Okay, so then I have a large item, and that's parks and trails. So parks and trails, the first is Concord Hills. And Concord Hills, we have talked to people in the Diablo Valley about opening that part of Concord Hills, which is about a third of the park, south of Bailey, in a timely manner. And so I'm going to be really looking to see that we are doing that. There are things that will be closed there, but we could open it without as much enormous effort as sometimes it takes to open a section of a park. We need a restroom. We need to have access from Bailey. We need a parking lot, and we need some signage. So I just want to put that out there. And of course, along with Concord Hills, we do need to name it this year, as you all know. Then second, Burrell. So the Burrell property is one that is a really prominent piece of land in the Ceremone Valley. It's between Costco and I-680, and people drive by all the time and say, what's happening there? And so what I would really like to do is get the next step of planning for that park. So, and then I would like to be sure we are planting new walnut trees soon, so that when we do open, we have that whole planting in place and at least on its way, because it will take a while for them to mature and produce walnuts. Then in terms of trails, or the other park for me would be Black Diamond and the Arata Ranch. I did go out yesterday. I saw the new barn. That area we have talked about as becoming the access to Black Diamond in a setting that has historical buildings. And this barn, I have to tell you, is just the coolest thing in the world. It's very, they supported it. They had to twist it because it had moved and twisted. They did a roof and they improved it inside. So there was a park employee there yesterday, and I was able to peek in the door and at least look at it. So when we look at the possibility of a funding measure, if you want to have a measure that would appeal to East County, Arata Ranch, as mini Ardenwood, would be the star. So just keep that in mind. Then the other trail that I want to mention is the need to pursue our Iron Horse Trail to the north, which we do have on our build list. And then programs is my next large one. And that I have several of them. One, of course, is our programs to address art in the parks. And we have a draft art policy that was in the works last year and which is on the executive committee this year. So I hope that everybody on exec will pay special attention to it. Rachel Arbios put it together and it has not been adopted by the board and it needs to have attention. Then the second program would be that of cultural resources. So what happened as COVID came in was we had a study done on archives and cultural resources by the Odney Group. And it was a very large report with many things that it said that we need to pay attention to. Their overarching issues were three: lack of resources for cultural, looking at cultural resources throughout the parks. Two, the isolated identities we have of parks. We don't share the stories back and forth and many other things. And then the third was reluctance for the park district to recognize a broader definition of recreation that includes culture and history. There's a lot more in this report, and so I am looking forward to it taking the next steps. It was presented at Natural and Cultural Resources and has been one of those things that was delayed. Then my third one under programs really has to do with healthy parks, healthy people, and it has to do with fattening that third grade program so that we reach out to a lot more third graders with the curriculum and the suggestions that we already have in place. I looked at the number of third graders we're reaching in the materials they gave us, and it was like 1,000 something. And how many third graders do we have? 60,000 in the East Bay. I think it's already set up and we need to be spreading that word more effectively to third grade teachers. And the other group under healthy parks is the seniors. Anne mentioned it, and I will mention it as well, because we have so many seniors who could benefit from the experience of being in the parks and having park programs. And we do some, but we do very little compared with our aging population. And then I have some miscellaneous, which are, I think we need to look at the all district funding. I absolutely think we need to work, I think probably just call that miscellaneous. Okay. And we absolutely need to be more of a green park district. I don't think we should be using plastic for anything. And we need to be an example. Plastic wrap is driving me crazy. And so I want to just pass that sentiment on and agree with Dennis on that. I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, we have to get away from the plastic that we use in all kinds of areas in the parks. And then I do want to say, I think we're on our way with the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm glad to see that happening. And then I also am very happy to see that the ADA access to Lake Anza is on the schedule for this year. And I want to I appreciate Jim O'Connor and Ops for working on that, because it's a beautiful lake and it's been very hard for handicapped to get comfortably to the lake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, great lists.
Wow. Are we on the last one, Director Rosario?
Yeah, last one. I won't have anything to say. No,
We are. We're gonna hear from Director Rosario, and then we'll take a quick break. So
that'd be
that's
great.
exciting.
Okay, so I kind of classified my stuff too. Under kind of governance, I have definitely pursuing and continuing our DEI efforts. I really want to see if the board can support the request of Dr. Ana Alvarez for a DEI task force that she presented. If we need an ad hoc committee to support that, I would support that. Also, internally, what Director Coffey's support for HR in that effort, because HR is it's one of our key departments, and it touches everyone in the Park District. And then also looking internally, as far as I think we need to reopen our apprenticeships. Our apprenticeship program has fallen by the wayside. I don't think we've had an apprentice in several years. That's one of the ways we can get women and people of color into higher skilled positions. And then on the looking externally, I really would like to have a more permanent bridge between some of our youth employers like the EBCC and the CCC, so that we can have direct and easier bridge, so that we can employ some of these young people in the Park District, either through internships or apprenticeships, or that's something I'd be really interested in. And then also externally, I was just at the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference, and East Bay Mud gave a nice presentation. They have a Grow Your Own program where they work with the Ella Baker Center, where they're actually training young people for specific jobs in East Bay Mud. And then also, they also have an equity contract policy, which I would like to see us do. They hire local contractors, so to promote local hire. We could do something similar, or even better, just as well, is to consider an overarching project labor agreements, so that we can have more local hire and develop apprenticeships in our communities. And then also, let's see, I think I covered that one. Good. Equity. Oh, and I think what Monaco has done with the Healthy Parks, Healthy People program is incredible. I think she needs help. And that program could be double its size, and we would reach a lot more people in our communities. And then also under governance, definitely we need to start thinking about our master plan. It's going to be due up. We're supposed to be doing it by 2023, which is just around the corner. And so we definitely need to be starting that. And then funding for the Park District has to be on our radar, and has to be now. If we're thinking of putting on a measure in 2022, we definitely need to be starting now. And if we're thinking about 2024, we still need to be doing it now. So it's all now, because those opportunities are, as they come up, we need to take advantage of it, and we do need the money, as Director Wieskamp has so forcefully put out there. And then, and as far another governance issue is, I'd like to finish up our board operating guidelines ad hoc committee. There are some key issues there. One is I want to have a standalone workshop where we can all discuss what our committee has brought up. One of them is, which is we want to carve out the district council to report directly to the board. And another one is, I just found out, is that we have no really policy around our contingency funds and how that money is doled out. So those are two examples of things that that should be done this year. And I'm looking forward to having that done. And then let's see, transparency. As you know, we're all sitting here in our Zoom, but I think, and in my discussions with Deborah Ocker yesterday, we cannot go backwards. And I think we have to have some kind of Zoom hybrid live in order to continue our increased visibility to our communities. So, and then, and then also around kind of finance stuff, I really think the part we should be setting aside monies for, I want to keep wanting to call it equity, but it's for our employees that are far below the medians. We should be setting aside money for those inevitabilities. I don't think it's just the responsibility of our unions to advocate for those. It is a district problem, and we should be setting aside money so that we don't we're not forced to do it. That we have the money set aside, that we can bring our folks up to the median. And then an overarching policy of wildfire, definitely. I think some of you may have met with people regarding the JPA that's being talked about. I think we should be part of that discussion, whether we agree with it or not. If we're not at the table, we can't be part of the solution or offer parts of the solution. And especially now with these the tree die-offs, a JPA makes even more sense in that respect. So, and then on that issue as well, on the tree die-offs, once we get all of the information, I think it would be a great idea for the Park District to have a town hall and invite all of our neighbors, especially the different agencies, and present it to our communities. And then let's see, and I agree with the Director Lang, we definitely need to rename Concord Naval Weapons Station. And with that in mind too, we probably should look at our park naming policy and maybe review that as well. I think as we've seen in this naming policy for the Concord Naval Weapons Station, there's a lot more considerations for equity. And I think we need to address those. And then going back to DEI quickly, we really need to start, make sure we collect all the data demographically, economically, so that we know who we're serving and who we're not serving. And I think collecting that data is incredibly important. Not only for the communities that we want to serve, but also for any grants that we are looking to apply for. Those are all going to be incredibly important. And then my last, well, not my last, but also wanted to restart the volunteers as everyone else does too. Again, I've made this request in the past, but I'm still haven't given up on the possibility of a park ranger / volunteer coordinator that would take some burden off park staffs to support volunteers, but also expand the ability of volunteers to contribute to the park district. And then I just want to acknowledge all the great work that's going on in Ward 2. I mean, from the creek restoration at McCosker, Roberts Pool rehabilitation, the continuing work with Lake Temescal, we're going to be having design soon for what is that? Over by the Embarcadero. Starts with a C. But anyway, and then also Judge John Sutter, and there's a prospect of possibly picking up Middle Harbor. I can't express, one of the big priorities for me is connecting the Bay Trail along the shoreline. And I think, now that our new general manager has a huge connection with the city of Oakland, as far as access, I was hoping maybe we could talk the city of Oakland into maybe changing some priorities as far as land use plans for right around right around Tidewater. If we can get some mixed use residential in there, we could build the community around the park. And so that would be wonderful, and we could create a nice Embarcadero type trail all along the shoreline there. So thank you. That's it.
Did you mean Crowley property?
Crowley, yes, Crowley. Yeah.
Thank you. Quite.
So is that all, Dee? Woo!
Yeah, you know, some of it is everyone spoke to, and I definitely agree with the greening and trying to get rid of the plastic bags. And I don't know if you know, City of Oakland just passed an ordinance banning gas-powered blowers and weed eaters.
I like the fact that none of us had to follow D this time.
Yes, I kind of blew up the box in the past, haven't I? And I apologize for that. But we all have some incredibly great ideas, and the one thing that strikes me is that the people that elected you all, I think, should be proud, because I think you definitely have the Park District and your constituents in mind. And I'm proud to be part of your group, and let's carry on.
So thank you, Director Rosario. Just for the purposes of our note taking for Deborah Spalding, the DEI is not a task force. It was a board ad hoc committee meeting, a board ad hoc committee.
Oh, okay, great.
Terminology.
Yes. Yeah, if that's what you need.
They're all really great interests that all the board members shared. And I think we've heard many of them, as Dr. Alvarez talked about earlier. These things take a long time. So a lot of these comments are very familiar to all of us. I think all the AGMs are taking lots of notes right now, but we have those documented, and we'll be able to review them and get them back to everybody to see if there needs to be any edits.
Director Wieskamp, then Director Corbett.
This is for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, when I came on this board, what were they talking about? Dumbarton Quarry being done. It's happening. So you've got to be patient, but you have to persist and persist and persist, but it can happen.
So how many, I want to know, how many years did that take?
I don't want to tell you. I just want you to know that you can succeed.
This is why there's a tradition of longevity on the board, because people want to stay around and make sure their projects are done. So we'll see you for a while, Elizabeth.
I'm really pleased about that one, you know, and I think a whole lot of people are. So
A good
our
example.
staff does their best.
A good example, Elizabeth, would be is if you had a 300-foot hole in the ground and you just truck by truck tried to fill it up. And then on top of that, build a mountain on top of that. Same equivalency.
But we're made money from it. We got a tipping fee.
That's true. That's true.
It was deeper, the depth valley, and now it's going to be a restored ridgeline down at
it's amazing.
Coyote Hills. But to give you the outside limits of how long park planning is, remember Judge John Sutter stood at the Oakland Army Base
in the
60s and said this should be a park, and 50 years later. So,
you know, that is the best park to sell. I pointed out on maps, I tell people about it, and they're exciting to go there. Some want to take the bike trail, some want to just see it, and then maybe go to the island and back. But they really like the fact, and I always mention that Judge Sutter said in the 60s, this should be a park. So I think people appreciate what people in the past have done to make, yeah, this is important. Let's just keep persisting. And they want to see it. They want to join the fishermen out there fishing on that pier.
All right. Director Corbett, did you have something else to add?
I was just two things. One, if you want us to discuss our hobbies, and maybe we could do that after the break, but I was hoping you would allow me to take the item that I discussed earlier in the meeting and place it on my list, which was to use the census data also to take a look at and potentially adjust other planning area maps and metro areas and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure it ended up on the right list. Thank you.
One more thing.
Thank you. Are we all ready for a break?
Oh,
we are. I think we are. Before we go for a break, I'm looking at the lists, and sometimes we try to see if there's one item that we want to talk about in a little bit more detail today. Typically, this one item can't really require a lot of staff preparation because we're just going to talk about it off the cuff. And I think, of course, Carol, Victor, and Anna and I were texting each other to say money was the thing that came up the most. I don't know if I'm prepared to talk about that, but during the break, think about if there is a topic that you'd like to spend about 15 or 20 minutes on, and we can see if anything bubbles up, and we can hear some hobbies. And we're already at just after 3 o'clock, so we don't have to keep talking if we don't want to either.
Wow. Okay.
So we'll have about a 10-minute break. Is that enough, or would you like 15?
I like 15.
15. I think Dee, you're smart. Negotiate for 15.
Tell us when you want us back.
We'll have a 15-minute break. So I guess that means we have to be back at what is 20 after?
Okay.
3:20?
3:20. Okay.
3:20. Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Everyone get a healthy snack.
Boy, are you being picky. We're used to cake.
Okay, everyone, you're live again.
Excellent. Welcome back, everyone. What's next on our agenda here? Recap and review.
Thank you, Director Rosario. I think we were very successful in capturing board interests. And so now is what we might do is identify some of the things that we would like to bring forward to board workshop number 2. I think, as I heard a director say, staff might need some preparation time before we have a focused topic. So we don't need to have a specific focused topic this afternoon unless there's something the board members would like to discuss amongst themselves. But we did identify some themes throughout the different conversations. Certainly the theme of funding came up a lot. And so we will be prepared at board workshop 2 to talk about the possibilities of future ballot measures, or how we're doing our long-term projections for our needs, putting those lists together, and we can bring that to board workshop number 2. And then another theme was, figuring out more about the data for our underserved populations. So really having a nice discussion on what data we have, what direction we're going in for our underserved populations, our diverse populations, and really having a nice meaty conversation about that. Staff's already working on putting something together, so we'd like to talk about that at workshop number 2. And then also the general theme of climate change, really kind of focusing on wildfires, smoke, fuels management. We can have a broad topic on that and then maybe drill down into specifics when we have more information, but to have a general conversation about that.
Would that include sea level rise too?
I don't think I think it'll be really about fires and fuels management and things like that. But we can add sea level rise. We can talk about when we can bring that forward.
Director Wieskamp has a question.
Yeah, but the discussion on the JPA that Dennis had mentioned to me at one point with regard to approaching fuels management jointly with other agencies. It would be interesting to talk about what the possibilities and sometimes the challenges are for doing something like that.
Director Wieskamp.
I think partnerships make sense. Talking about so many things from the homeless issue to trees that are dying or dead already throughout the state, the county. There's so many things like that that it makes sense. We're more likely to be able to do something if we come up with a common way of approaching it. And we haven't had a county committee in a long time, but we might ask if we could have one that if we wanted to focus on if there's another issue, but particularly, I know they've got a homeless committee. I'm not aware of how it's coming along, but I see no point in shuffling people in trouble from spot to spot. And again, I'll bring up when we're talking about underserved community, seniors, particularly those in residential homes and so on, the VA, the veterans and so on. I think we can partner with somebody on that. Maybe even, remember my magic word, funding, money, but maybe we can make our money go further on some of these things.
Yeah. Director Corbett.
If we're going to be talking about climate impacts on the district, I, just want to encourage everybody to discuss the issues of inundation and bay rise on our facilities. If we're going to do fires, we should do that as well. It's just as serious. It's just as much of a long range problem for us.
And I think we agree, Director Corbett. We just may not be prepared in 3 weeks, but we can absolutely put that on the calendar.
And if I may, I think you're exactly right. And in many ways, sea level rise is acute because each year that we lose, our ability to act and react, as Dr. Ana Alvarez pointed out in the beginning, the fuel, at least we need to make sure that this is the board's workshop. So we want to make sure that we're bringing forward what you need. I think the fuels management discussion was going to be more focused on, I think it's really important to really remind the board about our plan. We do get a lot of people saying that it should be reopened. And it's actually a very, very good plan, very much an alive plan. And more importantly, it's a plan that has environmental clearance, which no other agency in the East Bay has environmental clearance for a fuels management plan at the moment. And so really talk about the work plan and the fire season ahead of us. And then smoke, and we're doing a huge body of work with employee safety around smoke. So that's the concept, but we want to make sure that's what the board would like, or would you like a broader discussion?
I just want to make sure we don't end up any further behind on our discussion on the shoreline issues. It impacts pretty much all of our districts, along all of the Bay shoreline and the Delta as well. And a lot of work has been done on that recently by our planning staff. And I really think we need to get going on that because we're going to have some serious challenges in protecting our infrastructure. And, you know, maybe I just hear about it more because people in Alameda are very concerned and stressed about such issues. But I just don't think you can talk about climate change and parse out one issue or the other. But I do agree, obviously, you know, the fire issues are forefront, but I just don't want to get behind on the other one. So if we can be a close second in our discussion on climate change, I think that that's reasonable and important.
What other areas are there? Deborah, do you have other areas that could be focused discussions?
Those were some of the big ones that we, you know, since we're not in our in-person meeting, we didn't have a chance to go in the corner and talk.
Yeah.
So there are certainly other items that we have consensus that we would like to talk about. And I think your staff will go through and scour the lists and probably come up with a few other things that we'd be prepared to deliver at the March, I think it's 26th meeting. But those were the big ones that we wanted to check in with you on.
Sounds good. I think the funding thing, that should be a very good discussion because there's a lot of variables that need to be talked about and how we go about it. And that this is something that's needs to be urgent just because of the time frames. You know, 2020
Right.
is next year.
Absolutely. We should have been talking about it last year.
Yeah, but COVID.
Yep.
And then as you're aware, we will go ahead and we've captured all the notes and we will find a place for each of those items in a committee or bringing to a full board GM presentation or in some matter. And we'll bring back those notes at the next meeting. So you'll see where we've placed things and you can see if that is what you're thinking as well. We can always move things around.
Great.
Does that sound okay? Let's see, Carol Victor or Ana Alvarez, did you have anything else you wanted to add or any other observations that you made?
No, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for spending our time together virtually to understand your interests.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it was, Deborah, I just want to, compliment the board and compliment Deborah and Anna and Deborah Spalding because this was really well done virtually. It's our first virtual workshop, I believe, or at least this one. I guess we did the land sessions and such, but anyway, this worked very well and good job, everyone.
Thank you, Carol. We should also acknowledge Catherine Dunley. While you didn't see her, she also took up very copious notes for us to follow through, and she participated in developing the presentations today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you, Catherine. So the one other thing that we typically do at board workshop number 2, which was mentioned earlier, was gathering a board priority. So narrowing down the list of interests. By asking each of you to choose some off your list as higher priority than others. And I know that's hard, but in the past, and I think we can do this in a virtual setting, we have compiled your list, emailed it back to you, and asked you to identify 3 of your most critical items. And then I gather up all 21 of those items. Sometimes there's a duplication. And then at the next meeting, we will have some kind of virtual way of allowing you each to place your dots. So we're doing a little research on how we can do that in a virtual manner. And we'll hope that we can do something that works well. But we would ask each of you then again to use whatever technology we come up with. We'll just say we're placing our dots. On the list of say 21, you'll each have 3 dots to place. And we'll see where there's more consensus, just to drill down a little bit.
Sure.
So does that
and can we or can we not put all our dots on one thing? That's always the question. We've
didn't
gone
make
both ways depending on what year it is.
any rules about that. I think
We have a vote.
it's better for staff if they're dispersed a little bit more. It gives us a broader idea because
Yes, I think that's more fair, honestly.
if that's okay for the board. Remember, we did explore some other more elaborate priority settings, but with a virtual model, we're just going to stick with this one because we've done it before and it's a little simplified, and we can do something more elaborate in the future.
Simplicity is good.
Thank you.
Do you think we could get 4 dots?
Would you like 4 dots?
Only if you promise to spread them around.
We'll give each of you 4 dots this year.
Oh, what a good negotiation technique.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Deborah's being very generous, but it's not helpful in identifying the priority. So,
Hey, it's 4 makes it work. Good.
yeah. So if we keep to 3, and if you really, really have to do a 4th one, we can give you a special colored dot, but we should really keep it to 3.
You're right.
Okay.
Keep it to 3. Okay. I'm sorry, Beverly. It's going to be 3.
Good try. Good. And Ellen looked like she was willing to share them all over if you gave her 4.
Oh no, I believe in sharing them all over.
Good try all around, gang.
I tried, so.
So that'll be the process. I think we have some items identified for workshop 2, and we can report back to you on, what our final agenda is going to look like. Looks like Director Eccles has a question.
Yeah, I just have a strategy question. So it sounds like we're going to be talking about wildfire at the next one, as well as equity issues, which is great. But so I'm just wondering then, do we keep them on our list? Do we take them off? I'm trying to figure out, like, some of mine are, I think all board members have some very specific projects and some overarching projects. And so I don't know, since I'm new, anyone want to give me some tips on where to focus your dots?
Yeah,
Oh
it's
no,
always
you're on your own.
right.
No strategy hints. Okay, that's all right. I think I'm pretty good at handicapping it.
I can offer that wildfire fuels management is going to be occupying the district regardless of where you priorities. Because we've been in a
Save your dots for other ones.
yeah. That's, I hope I didn't
No, that was fair.
by suggesting that. Yeah. So
Fair.
that is just a well-known district priority
No escape.
to address, and it's expanding beyond our traditional ridgeline parks.
And it's like buying land at this point.
Yeah.
So how do we
Exactly.
make sure shoreline issues have that kind of category? Because that's something that's not going away either. You know what I mean?
If I may, Carol,
Yeah.
shoreline issues pertaining to a changing climate, it already falls within that level of urgency, given all the science that we know. So
Anna,
we
can you move closer, Anna? It's hard for you.
Sure. So we're truly doing a race against time, and so it's not going to fall off of our radar as a priority, and we will continue to bring it back, just like fire. And then there will be additional impacts that we're going to see that we've never seen before, that are going to take space because they're happening. So we have to address them.
Thank you very much. That makes me feel a lot better.
And
Ellen,
Elizabeth,
and I thought that planning presentation that I think came to executive last week, and I had a chance to see it on the, Neoma's doing presentation internal. I think that would be very interesting for everybody to see, myself.
Yeah, it's really good.
Chantel did. Yeah.
It's really good.
and Elizabeth, for your first time around, I would recommend you stay in your ward.
See, that's why.
Yeah, because everybody else does. So
Yeah.
Right. That's why Beverly didn't want to give me any hints.
I learned that
Because
the
we're
hard
supposed
way.
to have a broad perspective across the district. So
Right,
And
I
as
learned
long
it the
as
hard
you-
way.
That's what I did.
To the Brown Act.
ADA at Lake Anza, that was inside my ward, right?
You can conspire with each other too. That's
Yeah.
just watch out for the Brown Act.
No
Yeah.
seriata meetings.
Yeah.
We feel like junior high school. Can we make a trade?
Well, I just raised this thought and we should think about it. But, as a district, we're challenged with district-wide obligations or district-wide priorities and then ward priorities. And certainly there's overlap between board members. Just because something is in somebody else's ward, it shares a priority. But that's just something we just need to keep in mind. That, all of individual priorities and district-wide priorities that we're keeping focused, because I think by meeting some of the board members' individual priorities, we're actually meeting our stakeholders and the wider East Bay Regional Park District community. So I think this is just the continuing challenge as we look. And the wonderful thing about working for a park agency is there's so many beautiful, wonderful things you can do. And that's also what makes the job feel a little overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities to do great things, and how do you prioritize what those will be?
Excellent. So should we go, let's see, let's confirm our next meeting is Friday, March 26th at 11. Is that correct?
What start time would you like? Did you like starting at 12:30 and taking it off until maybe 5 o'clock, or would you like to at work?
Yeah.
12:30 would be better.
It's over by 5. I like to walk when it's later.
So let's make sure you change that to 12:30 on your agenda.
Yes. We will do that. 12:30 start.
Great. That's Zoom. Cool. And then should we go to public comments? We've got a couple of people that have graciously sat through
Rick is here.
our session. And then after that, we can do our hobbies. And then I have a little video I wanted to share with everyone. So.
Great. I think our clerk of the board is going to call on public comment.
I think I'm going to call on the iPhone person that came back. I believe that's going to be a public comment. Could you unmute yourself and give us your name?
Yes, hold on. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Wonderful.
And your name is?
I'm sorry. I was trying to get my iPhone to work. This is Cecilia Thies.
Okay. Cecilia, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, great. Okay, well, the reason I'm calling, your meeting actually was really very interesting, and it's nice to see all the different parts working together. I'm unfortunately calling speaking about something that I feel is really very, very negative. Sorry to change the tone. But I received a copy of the fact-finding letter that you did for the investigation that I asked to be done about the cats that were killed at my office park where I worked. And I am really saddened that I am not included in this fact-finding letter at all. And I am respectfully asking that letter not be distributed to another single person until I am able to sit down with you and show you all the documents and proof I have that will show contradictions throughout that entire letter. I also want to speak to the footnotes, 2 footnotes. And I can't believe that when a person carries a garbage bag full of dead animals into the office, that it's okay for him to call those animals party favors. And if he did something like that, I can't believe that only warranted a footnote mention, because that to me is super telling about how this person feels about animals. And I just really think that is in poor taste. I also just want to go ahead and say that the statement about sending a letter and the building being vacant is laughable because it was dated, I think he said October 21st. And that was just right before the November 3rd election. And all of my friends that work with the county were there around the clock at that property because we were the trainers for the polls for the elections. And so there's so many things in there that are wrong. And this is a document that will be historical, I think. I think someday if someone like me finds out that her animals are missing and starts to dig the way that I have been digging and asking for documents, because nobody would be honest and tell me what happened, they're going to read about party favors. And they're going to read a lot of things that are not true. And I need to be part of that investigation. I am absolutely, I am an open book. I have documents I want to show you. It has been said that I had a chance to speak, but I didn't. I was contacted when I was trying to get documents. I was being told that I could have conversations about why certain documents didn't exist. And I wanted documents because my history with employees that work for the parks has been really, really very, very strained. There was no mention about Lisa lying to me and telling me that she lied to the other volunteer, not me, about the cats being at shelters and the days that I spent going to all these shelters and looking for animals when that same night they actually continued to shoot. This is not right. You guys need to make this right. I mean, some really good things are coming out of what happened. And I think that that's fabulous, but you can't disrespect those animals and me like this. My job is on the line here because I am background checked for every assignment I take with the county. And right now, when you Google my name, it's all really unfair and untrue. And I need you guys to give me the same amount of time you gave that man and other employees so that I can show you how things happened from my perspective and I can show you proof. I beg you not to send that letter out to anyone else. It's hurting me. And I'm gonna talk to a lawyer. I don't want to, but it's libel, it's slander, it's not right. Those things are not true. And all you need to do is look at my timeline and my documents and then do another report. I mean, please guys, I'm a taxpayer. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. I asked if I could have a meeting with you guys and I was told that I could talk to the lawyers only by phone next week. I don't want to sit down with the lawyers and have them figure out, I feel a little paranoid, I realize, but I want to sit down with you guys and show my proof. I've worked really hard. I mean, this has really, really messed up my life. And on top of mourning the fact that those animals were everything to me, I'm also really messed up with how my reputation is being hurt. And I don't think I deserve that.
Cecilia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
District Council is going to say something. You're muted, Carol.
Ms. Thies, when we were reaching out in the capacity to reach you, I'm interim general manager right now, so I'm really the chief executive officer for the Park District. So when I was reaching out, and I think there were several communications through my paralegal, it was really in that capacity to talk to you and to hear your concerns. And it was clear to me that this was an issue that you really needed to be listened to, and I wanted to offer you that opportunity. So I believe my paralegal has reached out to you about setting up a meeting. I've asked the deputy general manager to join me on that meeting, and we will certainly give you the time to talk to us and share your concerns.
Thank you. Is there going to be a way that we will be able to share documents? I mean, I know that we have COVID problems, but if there was a way that we could meet where I could show you the stacks of things that I have, I think a phone conversation is going to be difficult. I really want to show you the documents.
So why don't we have, what I think it makes sense for us to have a discussion. We're in a public meeting and we can work out the logistics and we can work out the logistics in another setting. But there's a way to share documents on Zoom. There's also an ability to email documents. So I want to make sure that the information you want to show us, that you have the opportunity to do that.
I really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We had a letter, and then we're going to have Rick Ricard. You'll be last. So the letter, I'm going to read the letter into the record, and it is from Alley Cat Allies. And it says, on behalf of Alley Cat Allies, the nation's preeminent authority on cat advocacy, I write to urge the board of directors to reject the recently proposed free roaming cat management policy introduced last week to the Natural and Cultural Resources Committee. Our organization is the leading global advocacy organization dedicated to the protection and humane treatment of cats, with thousands of supporters in the East Bay. We are committed to promoting sound and compassionate policies and have worked with local governments to design and implement groundbreaking programs across the country. The free roaming cat management policy is based on wrong assumptions about cat removal efforts and their efficacy. My comment letter to the Natural and Cultural Resources Committee, dated February the 24th, 2021, includes a description of the various studies and real-world experiences concerning cat removal programs. Those studies have found that efforts to totally remove cats from areas like the East Bay are destined to fail. Indeed, when a colony of cats is eliminated, especially from commercial and heavily populated areas like those around the East Bay Regional Parks, a vacuum is created that inevitably will be filled with new cats. Indeed, it is our understanding that new unsterilized cats are filling the void left by the elimination of the colony at Martin Luther King shoreline. Data shows that trap, neuter, return policies can have effective and lasting impact in reducing community cat populations. But unfortunately, these studies were not included in recent staff analysis or consulted in the drafting and the proposed policy. We ask that the Park District takes this proven research into consideration and consults with experts such as Alley Cat Allies for additional guidance. We ask that the Park District creates an open, inclusive process that allows for all stakeholders and experts to work together to develop a humane, sound, and sustainable policy. As the Board of Directors discussed Park District priorities at their March 5th, 2021 meeting, we ask that you consider the following in regard to the free roaming cat management policy. Number one, commit to eliminating any option for the shooting and killing of cats in the East Bay Regional Park District. 2, delay a full board vote on the policy until you have met with outside experts, including Alley Cat Allies, to discuss the efficacy of TNR and all humane programs. And 3, meet with Alley Cat Allies to hear our concerns about the process in which the policy was assembled. Thank you, Becky Robinson, the president and founder of Alley Cat Allies. And did that in under 3 minutes. And then we have Rick Ricard. And you've been here all day, so welcome.
Oh, it's been very interesting. Thank you very much. The former general manager once accused me of being a man of few words, so I'll try to stay within my 3 minutes. Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. I'm here today in my role as chair of the Park Advisory Committee. As you know, one of the items on our 2021 work plan is to update the mission statement and operating guidelines of the Park Advisory Committee. And so our executive committee has been working on a draft to present later this year. Most of the work that we're doing really is just wordsmithing and clarification of issues. But one area where we unanimously agreed more emphasis is needed and needs to be added to the mission statement is the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which obviously parallels a lot of things that were said here today. We discussed a number of ways to approach the issue because, well, how do you get underrepresented communities adequately represented on the PAC? And we considered just encouraging board members to make appointments appropriately. We considered adding seats to the PAC. We had a number of ideas like that. And at that point, I approached Dee Rosario and said, it might be worthwhile to get input from the board, since we are asking, we're putting onus on the board to work with us on this. And so that's why I'm here, is to solicit your considering placing this issue on the agenda of the next workshop or some other appropriate venue to get feedback from the board. In the remainder of my time, let me briefly summarize what we've done so far. We obviously want to encourage board members to consider diversity and equity in making appointments to the board, to the PAC, but we realize that's a long-term solution since the turnover is fairly low among committee members. We also considered adding members, but obviously since we already have 21 members, adding a lot of new members would make it more cumbersome. Also, we realized that there are dozens of organizations we could go to ask them to appoint people to the committee, but how do you choose among those dozens to add 2 or 3 people to it? Fortunately, in the last few days, Lisa Baldinger came to us with a discussion she had with Mona Coe. Mona had suggested to her that we add 2 members to the PAC appointed by the Multicultural Advisory Committee. Mona's suggestion was they should be non-voting members. We think they should be voting members if that is the way we end up going. But that allows the committee to have a process for choosing representatives that are appropriate to the multicultural group and ensure some regular rotation of those people. And it gives, in the short term, representation of those communities on the PAC until we can come up with a better way, or a way for the board to work with us to encourage diversity in future appointments. So that's the background. If it's appropriate, we would like to get your input on that so that we can begin to put our mission statement together and carry out the board's wishes in that regard. Thank you.
Good ideas. Thank you. Okay, is that the, oh, director, I mean, not director. I keep quoting you. Interim general manager.
Yes, responding to Rick Rickard's comments, would that be an issue you would like to discuss at the next workshop, or we could bring it forward at a board meeting as well for discussion?
If it's something we're going to take action on, then maybe a board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. We'll bring it forward.
Well, except I like the idea of having a discussion on the workshop. You know, the number of 21 for the PAC took quite a while to reach. You know, for a while we had 35 and people weren't coming, and then we had to filter down how many, who would appoint from where. And, you know, 2 more doesn't seem like that many, but I would, you know, for us to do it at a board, that means somebody else has to do the staff work and then give us a presentation. And I would just as soon have a more free-flowing discussion at the workshop. I'm happy to have that discussion.
And it's going to have to, I think that might work in terms of, because we're going to try to build consensus and then draft our PAC policy to reflect what the board's consensus is. So having a workshop and then bringing a later board action could work very.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, I know both Eric and Lisa have, when we have positions that are opening up, they're always reminding us of the need to have people on PAC who reflect our ward. And I think they've been very faithful about doing that. We just haven't necessarily done it. So, yeah.
Hard to find.
I agree that to discuss it at a workshop, I think makes sense before we bring it to the board as a final proposal.
Great. We'll make it happen.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Would that be a workshop with the PAC?
No.
No.
Bring it to the next workshop.
Get it done.
I can attend representing the PAC, and I can also ask others from our executive committee to join us if they are available.
Wouldn't we want to have a fuller discussion between the board at a workshop with the rest of the PAC? I mean, I know, Rick, you would do an excellent job of representing them, but I just think that would give us a better conversation if we're going to have a full conversation on this issue.
Are you suggesting a separate workshop?
Yes. The reason why is because we have a lot to discuss at the next workshop based on the issues we just mentioned. And I don't want to give a short shrift to this really important issue of discussing with the PAC more diversity.
So if I may make a suggestion, why don't we put it on the next agenda just to frame the issue and describe some of the board policies around the PAC and the numbers, and then we can have we can touch on the issues, and if there's a need for a joint workshop between the board and the PAC, then we can schedule it, but we can at least have a preliminary conversation. Would that meet your needs?
Yeah, that would make sense to me, because once we have input from the board, we can go back to the PAC and get approval there. And I think that's the right order to do it in. And certainly we can do a workshop or something else if necessary.
Director Corbett, does that work?
Sounds good to me. I just think there should be more voices. The more voices, the better.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Great. And then was that the last public comment?
Yes, President Rosario.
Okay, we're gonna let's go around and we'll everyone on we'll let everybody on the screen will get an opportunity to do their hobbies. Let's start with who do I let's see. Let's start with Colin Coffey, Director Coffey.
I think I did. I said,
oh yeah, you're the ambassador.
Is my hobby.
That's right. Okay.
And it truly, it's been for years. Mila and I have been doing the volunteer work, tabling and other such things that they have us do since 2005. So it's a very much been a pastime and therefore a hobby that we both enjoy together. And other than that, with like Elizabeth, politics is a bit of a hobby, just being active in my own community and the broader communities where political things happen. That's a form of a hobby. It's also, now that I'm on this board, part of the job, I guess. But I walked my first precinct when I was 10 years old for a 23-year-old George Miller, who was running for his just passed away father's Senate seat. So that's my earliest memory, is knocking on doors at 10 years.
Great. Director Eccles.
Well, you just heard two of mine. So, well, so I hiking, politics, and travel, I think what's what I would put as my hobbies.
Excellent. Director Wieskamp.
I like to garden, as long as I have a gardener occasionally to help me. I don't have a normal garden. I don't have grass as such. I just have tons of different kinds of plants, some of which came from Annie's Annuals, and I don't have a clue what they are. As long as they survive in Livermore, they're my kind of plants. Ellen would appreciate that. She knows a lot more about plants than I do. I guess local politics I like to get involved with. Nationally, it's sometimes been difficult for choices. This time it was not. I belong to the Livermore Amador Symphony Guild, and we raise money for our symphony that has not been able to, of course, perform this year, except by Zoom. And we have estate sales, and we haven't been able to do that either. And it's been very difficult because we have people who had stuff on hold. And believe it or not, from estate sales, you can make $5,000, $10,000 because you have all volunteers putting it together. So it goes back into the local community. So I like that kind of activity. And I admit I like to read, and I like to watch good Netflix. And if I hate them, I turn them back in again.
Great. Director Corbett.
Well, I would say politics is a hobby of mine. I think I have you beat though, Colin, even though Colin and I first met a million years ago when we were both young Democrats. I don't know if you all know that. Doing all kinds of mischief as the young volunteers in the Democratic Party. We'll tell you some stories someday, or maybe not. I probably walked my first precinct when I was 5. So I do like politics and, as a hobby, and in particular, environmental advocacy, which goes along with what Anne already said. As you all know, I'm a very avid gardener. I'm wild about gardening. I love gardening. I could come over and probably identify all of Anne's plants if she'd like me to.
I might take you up on that.
Yes, and my subsets are vegetable gardening, including growing plants from seed for vegetables, especially heirlooms and other unusual types of things. And then I love, love, love my rose garden. I'm a major rose gardener. And then also I grow cymbidium orchids as well. So there you go.
Lovely roses into the district at times. I remember beautiful roses.
Director Waspy.
Geez, I'm struggling here. I want to do something different. I hike in the parks every day. I play golf in our parks. And recently with the COVID deal, I built a 100 square foot garden shed in my backyard, and I've been gardening with my wife, which is a lot of fun. I look forward to a ventriloquist, becoming a ventriloquist and a juggler.
Wow.
That could be an interesting Zoom.
Could do a retreat and have Dennis lead it.
I will end, and I can juggle, and it was one of the best years in my park district career was working at, Dee, were you there? It was in 1974 at Don Castro Park, where one lifeguard decided that he was going to learn to juggle, and we were all walking throughout the parks, all 15 lifeguards, 5 park rangers, and everyone would walk through the park just throwing balls up in the air all the time. And we all learned, and it was all great. And I never forgot it. So
that was the year before I started. Director Lane.
Yes, I'm hiking now, but I used to be a competitive tennis player and I really enjoyed that. Although I didn't play as much as the people I played with. So I had to figure out other ways to get in shape. I'm local historian. I started with Oakland Museum as a history docent, and then we started this museum in Danville. And so I did research and writing and exhibits and programs, and still keep my hand in on that. And trails, I am on the Anza Trail Foundation, which is the support group for the Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail. And that happened when I went to one of the California Trails conferences, and somebody got me. And so I've been doing that for a little while, and I just recently got a hold of Jim Townsend in Cambria, and he is now on the board. So I'm proud of folding him in because he knows more than everybody else on the board. And then a few years ago, I started a group called the Friends of San Ramon Creek. And so that group is perking along, doing a variety of things, particularly Arundo eradication. And we're part of Walnut Creek Watershed Council, and that's the largest watershed in Contra Costa County. So that's been a very interesting experience, especially dealing with people who say things like creek. What creek? Oh, people could not know they have this huge creek. No. Anyway, I'm always trying to, I like to get things started, and then I try to see if I can find new leadership to carry on. And I think we're doing pretty well with Friends of Saramone Creek, with a number of men who retired from Chevron with all kinds of science and technology knowledge. And they're like, well, we've just got to do this. And they do drones and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm hoping that I can just be there and applaud people now, and that others will take on this task.
Great.
That's it.
I should ask Deborah.
Well, goodness, thank you for calling on me. I have to say, during COVID, it's been hard to have a lot of different hobbies that you used to do. You know, we're not even going skiing this year, just trying to stay away from the crowds. But certainly we've been taking the family on hikes all the time. We tried Sonoma last weekend, and I did not get there early enough because it was full by 10:30. So you have to go early. And then we've been cooking a lot. So cooking with the girls, now that they're getting older, they're interested in doing that. But yeah, when the theaters open up again, it'll be fun to get out and go to restaurants and stuff.
Great. IGM, Carol Victor.
I have to agree with Deborah. It's been really hard to have a hobby during COVID. So the Park District has been my hobby, and it's a lovely hobby to have. So I always say that, you know, that this is municipal law with field trips, that you can get out into the parks. So I would say it's parks, walking my dog, although I think she would protest that she's underwalked right now. I like to cook and spending time with friends, and obviously COVID's impacted all of that. We've had a few driveway gatherings, but what a nice question to ask, Dee. I really appreciate being asked what my hobby is.
Chief Chaburra.
Well, hi, everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you. I think getting outside, anything we can do to get outside to a park or a playground is important. And I know I've talked to Director Corbett about this. We have a little mini garden, and with little boys, it's fun because you put the dirt down, you plant the garden, and then if you get bugs or some kind of things that are eating your plants, they love to take those, and their 10-year-olds aren't kind to insects that are eating your plants. And then if we move into rodents, then they enjoy that part of it too. So it's not so much what we grow, it's the process and capturing things that are trying to eat what we're growing. And to go out there at 10 o'clock at night with flashlights and look at things that come out and eat your plants, it's really cool. The kids love it. So I think that's it.
A different side of gardening. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Remember that side. Yeah.
Great. Let's see. Is Yolanda there?
Yeah, Yolanda's here. So what do I like? And I've spent my life caretaking everybody. And so my husband's in good shape. My kids are in good shape. So what I like to do is yard work, not so much gardening, because I'm really not good with flower things. But, you know, if you give me a cactus or something like that, and I can really work with that. So, but I do like being outside, walking my dog. And I like politics. So I consider local politics, my hobby. And I think when I get older, I'll be able to my favorite thing to do is read, but I don't have time to sit like that. So soon I will be able to do that. So thank you for asking, Dee.
You're welcome. Deputy General Manager, Dr. Alvarez, are you still here? I see your name.
Thank you, Dee. That's a great question. Just much like Carol, COVID has really kept me and my family indoors. My children are, thank God, they're doing really well in their university. So my favorite hobby is to support them. And I've been spending a lot of time in the district, focusing on the park district. But I'm hoping to change that very quickly, very soon. And with the arrival of our new general manager, so that's going to help tremendously. And I truly enjoy dancing. I love music, and I miss this going out to live performances and concerts. And I love museums. And my only risk that I did over the pandemic was to go during a shelter in place to the De Young Museum to see a very special exhibit. So during the pandemic, I find myself dancing in the kitchen with my husband. Yes, and doing salsa lessons with my children in the living room, and visiting our parks. And I've also taken the opportunity to visit and make time with my colleagues in the Bay Area to visit their park systems. So I spend a lot of time really enjoying places that I never really took the time or got to know in San Francisco. So I very much appreciate my former general manager, Phil Ginsburg, in hosting me and being able to access such special places in Golden Gate Park. So that's where I spend the majority of my outdoors time, either the George Miller Trail in Carquinez Strait, understanding that area of town, or across the bay in San Francisco.
Great.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. I see Deborah Spalding.
Hi there.
Hi.
I love running, and I recently, during shelter in place, got into yoga. So I've been doing that every day, and reading and classical music.
Wow. Cool.
Hiking.
I see Jim O'Connor. Is he still with? Yeah, there he goes.
I'm here. So my hobbies, my wife and I do a lot of hiking and biking. And that's kind of our thing. And it used to be travel, and someday again, we'll travel again. So we usually try to do a nice trip that's tied in with hiking every 2 years. So, and then also I do a lot of gardening. I brew beer. There's a few other things I do, but that's kind of my thing. I'm spend a lot of time in our parks hiking and getting out there. So appreciate that. And sometimes I even forget how old I am, and I try to do some backcountry skiing, and that usually results in a lot of pain for several weeks. Thank you.
I hear you. Let's see, who else do I see? Catherine Dudney is next on my list here.
Hi, thank you for asking. I guess my main hobby is usually around music. I'm on the board of directors of a small nonprofit for women, and we have a couple of retreats a year, so we're doing all of those on Zoom, and so that's been not as fun as in person, but it is something to do. We have a chorus that meets weekly, and I've been doing a lot of songwriting as well, just on my own. So that's kind of my main hobby, other than playing with my 4-year-old and reading lots of kid books and going to the playground.
Wow, that's great.
So Catherine, I think we need a theme song, the Park District.
Yeah, I always say that my mission in life is to connect people, nature, and music, and I've always been able to get 2 at a time, but not really 3. We'll see.
Oh, that'd be great. And let's see who else is on my screen. I see Mary Mattingly.
There she is. Okay, thank you. Yes, I have many hobbies. I don't do them right now though, because you can't really do theater right now. It's not fun. Some people do it online, but I row my rowing machine. I go hiking. I camp, and I make collage art in my husband's studio. He's the artist. I'm just these are his paintings. And I do, Anna, like to camp or dance in the kitchen with my husband as well. So that's a big pastime. Thank you.
Great. Let's see. Christina Kelchner. Oh, you're muted.
The dreaded mute machine.
Oops, still muted.
Yes, for some reason it's stuck. Let me see if I can help her.
We can come back. I see Sydney Erickson.
That's funny. I'm actually, funny you bring up music. I'm actually a musician myself. I play the piano. So piano, books, I love to read. And I play a lot of video games as well. So those are my main hobbies.
Great.
Okay. Did you get Rick?
Ricker, yes.
Wow, I get 2 appearances today.
Yeah.
Gee. Well, it won't surprise you to know that I'm into bicycling and bicycle advocacy. And that is, I've been able to continue during the pandemic, and that's been very nice. Another little hobby that I have is something I work on with Dee, which is trying to get the Bay Trail completed through Oakland. It's unlikely to happen in my lifetime, but maybe the new general manager, as Dee said, can move that along a little faster. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great. Christina, you ready?
I think she's still muted.
Oh, I have Eric.
Came on a minute ago.
Yes, she was on a minute ago.
Her little audio connection thing was going around.
Yeah.
Eric Fueler, I have is on my list. Eric, you still here?
Yeah. I was actually half tempted to say work as a hobby, but
no, you get paid.
But I guess to answer the question directly, and thanks for asking, Dee. I definitely enjoy running. That's my favorite outdoor activity. And I listen to a lot of music. I do that more than TV or anything else. And then I have to say politics. I think you all know that that's something that I'm keenly aware of. So those are my hobbies, I guess, at this point. I mean, the stuff that I really like to do, like travel and go to concerts and things like that, just isn't happening right now, obviously.
That's right.
Thank you.
Oh, Christina's mic on.
I think we got Christina. No?
Oh.
No.
It says it's off, but we can't hear you.
Christina, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
Oh, okay, I've got to enable the chat. The chat is disabled. Hold on.
Oh.
Okay, now you can go, Christina. Chat away. Tell us what you do. Camping. Is that it?
Hey.
We waited all that time for that? Give us more.
Come on, to add something else.
Did I miss anybody?
I went to Irvine Regional Park.
My turn. My wife always accuses me of having ADD, and
advertised as the first regional park. She went to Irvine Regional Park, advertised as the first regional park in the state. Okay.
Excellent. So
right.
you'll probably agree with Robin that I have ADD. I play guitar, I do Tai Chi, I ride my bike, and as soon as we get out of this COVID thing, Anna, you and I are gonna have to go salsa dancing, and then every couple of months I pick up litter on Redwood Road from the park entrance all the way to Skyline Boulevard, and then I also do I volunteer trail work for Friends of Sausal Creek, and I also like to hike. We also like to hike. So there you go.
Pretty good.
Is it too late to add something to my list of interests? Salsa dancing in our parks.
Yeah.
Too late for me to add that as a priority.
I think Director Eccles, did we miss you?
No, you didn't miss me, but I just wanted to clarify that I gave my overall hobbies as opposed to my COVID hobbies. So I'm currently traveling. I just want to be clear about that. But I want to take the opportunity then to substitute out dancing with my daughter and yoga. Those are cool.
There you go.
I need to add dancing also. Thank you for that. Yes.
Well, it's good to see that we're all well-rounded and staying healthy. So before we close, I think we have a video to show you if you haven't had an opportunity to see it. And then we will end with that.
Is it there?
I see it.
Oh, thank you.
There we go.
Earthrise.
Oh, yeah, this is wonderful.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training and sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not, just as we chose to go to the moon. We know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as the weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an Earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
What do we want to elect her to?
That was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
Anything and everything she wants.
I think she's
president. Yeah. She really is.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, very wonderful. So with that, thank you for a wonderful workshop. There was a lot. Now that I'm president, I see all the work that goes into these, and it's a lot. And I really appreciate everyone's work and their it's culminates in a successful workshop. So thank you all so much. Get out there, catch a little sun before the rain starts.
Oh, we can bake, we can dance, we can garden, we can bike. Have a good time.
We can juggle. You forgot juggle.
Oh, well, you gotta get back into it again. All right.
Good job. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dee, for leading us through this.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
All in a
everyone.
good humor. That was a
Bye.
good way to finish.